Welcome back to another episode of the Two Track Mind podcast. We have some great guests for this episode. These guys have been making a huge splash in the BRZ GR86 community with their newly designed extra capacity oil pan for the FA24 motor. And as of this episode's release, I've been told that pre-production units are now in hand, so the development process is continuing at a good pace. Chapters are available in the description if you want to jump right into the discussion around the oil pan, but I would highly encourage you to watch this episode through all the way because these guys have a wealth of knowledge and amazing stories that we're going to try and unpack in this episode. With that out of the way, enjoy the episode.
Well, it's more of it's the address book.
We haven't
find people online.
We haven't consolidated our accounts.
Yeah. Okay, so that's like so confusing that both of you guys actively manage it, and then we're like messaging. We just have no idea who's who.
Oh yeah, because you said I'm here. I'm like,
Ping's it's gonna be an hour and a half, and then 10 minutes later, like, oh, I guess I'm early. I'm like, what? What do you mean? It's like, oh, it's Kelvin. I'm like, oh, okay, I'll be there in like 15 minutes.
Yeah, we both use the Instagram account. So.
Yeah,
you never know who you're gonna get.
Yeah,
that's a high level of trust.
Yeah,
it's like you guys working different customer service shifts. You know, we have to pick up the inbox from the previous person and clean up their mess.
Yeah,
and all their promises. All right. Well, welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Two Track Mind podcast. It is a very special one. Not only because we have a very special pair of guests with us today, but it is also the very first episode that we get to shoot in the new Two Track Mind studio space. Whoa. So we are on the mezzanine of Driven Autosport right now. So shout out to Enrique and shout out to Matt. I say shout out to Enrique. Now he's being quiet. He's down there somewhere. And we're just super excited to now have this space to be able to bring our friends in and share our automotive stories with all of you guys. Hopefully this is like, a nice, inviting, warm, space. Get everybody in the zone, have a drink, and just share some automotive stories. So tonight's guests, I am so excited to have them here. We have Ping Zhang and Kelvin C. These two are the dynamic duo behind Formula Delta. Probably two of the smartest guys that I've had the pleasure to get to know and to meet. People who are extremely open to help you out. You've ever seen them at the local tracks, TMP, GP, Shannonville. These guys know what they're talking about. And if they open their mouth, you listen, you take notes. You scribble away and you reference it another day.
Too kind.
And as of late, you've probably seen some of their content related to solving a problem in the GR86 BRZ space with a oil pan that they are designing and manufacturing. And I'm sure we'll get into that because I know a lot of people are very excited to hopefully solve this problem once and for all. So without further ado, Ping and Kelvin, in your own words, who are you and what do you do?
Yeah, do you want to? Okay, sure. My name is Ping. I guess Kelvin and I started Formula Delta Performance Solutions. It's been a long time coming. Both of us went to university together, and through years of struggling through Formula student school and work and our hobbies for cars, we arrived here. We've been working on various things in the background, but the one that's been catching a lot of traction right now is the FA24 oil pan. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. But both of us come from a engineering background. I went to school for mechanical engineering. Kelvin went to school for mechatronics engineering, and then I continued doing grad school and wanted to pursue a career in the automotive space, but ended up going for something else. And now this is more of a hobby. And maybe I'll pick up again if the business goes well or if the product catches on. We may reevaluate and see where it goes. Kelvin, do you wanna go for it?
Yeah. So Formula Delta, I think, is something that's really of Ping's creation, really starting out as something to represent his passion, his project to build his time attack car in EK, a EK Civic with a K20 swap. I only really got tapped one day when I was working somewhere in the States, and he just finally got the car up and running for the first time I saw him. I was like, look, you're at the bottom of the autocross timing chart. This is the problem, mate. So, at the time I was working in automotive engineering, and I'm like, dude, tell me the setup. Like, what's going on? And he tells me his spring rates. And I'm telling him, like, look, I do this for a living. Just give me the information. And lo and behold, I gave him one suggestion. And next time he went out, mid-pack. So I think that was the start of realizing how we can work together outside of just a school project, and work together on something we're both very passionate about. And Formula Delta is the representation of our collective passion for performance, for trying to push ourselves, push the product, push the car, and push our knowledge in this field of motorsport.
Gotcha. So, we're going to talk about the pan for sure. And you kind of talked about how early days, there was a little bit of setup, tuning and advisory and how things got started. What were some of the other major projects that the two of you guys, if you think about the first time that you guys met and worked together, and, the magical spring rates, right, to now manufacturing end-to-end products, what were the milestones in between?
Yeah. I mean, well, we can go way back. Like Kelvin and I started out attending a vehicle dynamics seminar together in school. And then from there, we knew, the basics of how a car should behave through just physics. And then once we were done with that school project, or like school student team, we both went on to working, and then we went back to looking for chasing that passion, and ended up getting a car, started modding it, and then tried to apply a lot of that knowledge back into the car. Mm-hmm. There were a lot of projects that happened in the background. Like, we have a entire driver development program. We have vehicle dynamics programs. Kelvin worked professionally on vehicle dynamics, as well as other automotive endeavors that's related to tires and whatnot. So we both had a lot of knowledge going into this. We was just looking for a place to apply it. From my side, it's mechanical design, analysis, and then manufacturing and implementation. And then, of course, from Kelvin's side is the vehicle dynamics, the lap time simulations, the data analytics, and all that other, the theoretical as well as the practical part of that. So it goes all over the place. Mm-hmm. We've been exploring, various things. But the one project that's been kind of catching on is trying to resolve this problem that's more realistic and more tangible. Mm-hmm. Because when you talk vehicle dynamics with a lot of people or car setup, unless they own that chassis or unless they know the background, it's hard to have that conversation. And I just feel like it's more of a niche topic. Whereas when you talk about an oil pan or you're talking about engines blowing up, it's very tangible. Everybody kind of understands how it works or how it doesn't work. Yeah. So yeah, I think that's where we found this like common language, I would say. And yeah, we're hoping to get something to the market, and we can talk about that later. But yeah, Kelvin, do you have anything to add there?
Yeah, I think a lot of the project for starters is definitely Ping in his early days really wanted to build that time attack car. So I was there to quote unquote engineer the car, so to speak. And then on the flip side, of course, you'll see us at the track kind of doing some crazy stuff there in terms of just getting the car, trying to get every single second of the car, and me yelling at Ping like, okay, we got to find something. Like, it's got to be an ace up our sleeve. Like, what is it going to be? But then on the flip side, I think there's a lot of indulgence in just exploring topics in vehicle dynamics, ranging from, I think, more like some of the recent stuff is kinematics. We did kinematics for RSX, and I think I still have to do it, but kinematics for the EK Civic, ranging to just tires. We got a tire dyno.
Yeah.
We got we can do vertical rate we can vertical rate test our tires, and also do some very interesting static contact patch shape analysis with that, and that informs a lot of that feedback. Even though you think of it as these are very technical topics, they do feed back into how we think about the car, how we think about setup, and we do bring that knowledge and expertise as we apply that to different chassis with that understanding.
For sure.
We've actually had them as suppliers before. So early on in the days of NUMI, where we were trying to, explore different tires, I think you guys did a contact patch study, something similar to
Vertical stiffness, yeah.
Exactly. It was really cool. There was like an article when there's like a printout of like what the contact patch of the tire looks like under certain angles of camber. Like those were all so interesting. And then I think for those who are listening and hear the words like kinematics and the topics of vehicle dynamics, you can get into some of the Formula Delta super nerdy, super highly technical articles. But it's really cool. When you talk about kinematics, you're talking about sort of simulating the travel of each suspension member. Like, can you go into a little bit about what that means for our viewers who don't know?
So kinematics simply means the study of motion without the consideration of forces. So imagine you have a linkage, a door hinge, or like even your trunk. If it's like I think on the BRZ, it's a 4 linkage.
Yeah.
And then, that can manipulate through its travel, and that takes a certain, it travels along a certain path. Well, your suspension is exactly the same thing, right? You can understand the suspension system in terms of how it's manipulating the tire. And ultimately, that's really important because guess what? Between you and the road, there's the tire. And anything you can do to make the tire happy, including manipulating and designing for or understanding kinematics, that's an advantage that you can have on the track.
Mm-hmm.
No. You mentioned you're currently looking at the RSX in some of your kinematics. And so that is a chassis that unfortunately I'm very familiar with from a driving perspective. Tell me from your professional opinion, tell me about that front end.
Well, let's put it this way. We finished our analysis with the RSX, and we don't think we're going to proceed much further with it.
How long did it take you to come to that conclusion?
Pretty quickly. As soon as I gave Kelvin the suspension points, there was obviously some differences between that and some conventional suspension design. And then once you start looking into the details, this car does not like being lowered. But the entire aftermarket industry wants to lower this car. And there are these various corrections and blah, 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 relocations. It just tries to brings it back to stock, but the amount that you lower is significant. And the amount you can correct is not that significant.
Yeah.
So you kind of end up in this in-between phase. And unfortunately, nobody wants to raise their car back up once they lower them.
I mean, that's why we drove it with like, I don't know, 2 hand gaps basically when we raced it. Because we were just like, okay, no, like the scariest thing about driving this car is driving it straight.
Yep.
Especially when the racing line on the straight, there's a wall beside you. Because you're just basically praying, it's like, don't hit a pebble, don't hit a pebble. This is because the steering is just going to go all over the place. One of the teams that we race with in Lucky Dog has the Civic SIR, which is basically like the same front end.
Yeah.
I was talking with them, Higgy Motorsports. They mentioned something about inverting the front suspension that fixed some of these problems. I see you smirking a little bit. What does that mean to you?
No. So the reason why, so my opinion, this is my opinion. Someone might have a different opinion. My opinion is that from the factory stock, the suspension kind of makes sense. Yes, the tie rods are up, mounted up high. Yes, the tie rods are, super long and it's kind of weird, but sure. But technically, that's already like off. Like you can kind of see what they're trying to get away with. Like a McPherson strut, you can kind of think of it as top. The strut top is like this infinite length control arm. And so like, okay, to match like the tie rod steering linkage lengths, they just make it as long as possible so that way they can minimize bump steer.
Mm-hmm.
It's just keep it stock. Like,
Did the car? Actually, question for you: Did it feel significantly differently once you raised the car?
Well, for us, we never really drove it too low.
Okay.
Yeah, we so PCI, which is like a pretty popular aftermarket parts manufacturer for Hondas, right? I think they have a lot of experience with the RSX, and so we had a whole bunch of like these correctors for the toe and for the bump, and I think there were like these gauges that you can get to try and get the steering arms as parallel to the ground as possible when it's static and bump.
That's not how it works. Like, it's parallel to the ground. That's not what you're solving for.
Anyway, it's like no one's trying to defend the chassis. Okay, I think I'm just trying to share my experience of having lived.
To be honest, as an owner of the RSX, like,
Yeah.
I'm still trying to track that thing, and I cannot even figure out how to make it work. Just even physically, like, I have the same problem with stock power. I can't even get the thing to drive straight.
Yeah.
It's not. Yeah. I mean, I think there are a lot of inherent flaws with it, and that's one of the reasons why you never saw that design ever again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why do you think they did in the first time? Because I mean, obviously, like you think it was like, oh, maybe like packaging it was cheaper to do, but is there something else?
This is a hypothesis and probably speculation. But
It's the best kind.
Yeah.
Speculate away.
when you look at some of the development videos and R&D videos where they get to interview the engineers,
Yeah.
the Honda engineers, I think they put the majority of their budget in the engine and the powertrain because it was the first
K20,
introduction of the K series and a high performance K series. And then when you look at the car underneath, they look seemingly like they prioritize the exhaust flow path over where to put the steering rack.
Yep. Okay, I see.
And then, if they couldn't package it, they couldn't sell a car, so they made the compromise of the location of the steering.
Which for people who don't know, where is it?
It's very highly mounted. It is on the firewall, basically.
Yeah.
Just outside of the firewall. Yeah. And then when you look at it, it is the tie rods are above the frame rails. It is poking through and attaching somewhere in the middle of the strut.
Yes. It's literally
Yeah.
on the
So
shoulder. Yep.
that's
And why is that a problem for the uninitiated?
So you have this problem where once you start lowering the car, the instant centers of all these points starts diverging from itself. The roll center is below the ground, and once you hit once you have any kind of suspension movement, there's a significant toe change with the tire.
Yep.
And then couple that with, the front wheel drive torque steer, blah, blah, blah. Once you lose a little bit of traction on one tire, then the other one picks up. It just doesn't help inspire confidence driving straight even. So then, once you're in a corner, same thing happens. You hit a bump and the car's all over the place.
Yep. Magical.
Yeah, it's just so difficult to control. And then as an aftermarket, like, what do you do with the design? Like, you move it and everything's like misaligned anyway. So, just deal with it.
Yeah.
That's honestly my perspective. You're not gonna work miracles with it.
I didn't know that's why Jay called it the rickety raft, but I can kind of see it now.
It is. I don't regret racing it for the past couple of seasons because I think it actually, like, because of all the problems that it has from a design perspective, it forced us to be a lot more aware as drivers. It's like, so there's one thing to track it, there's another thing to time attack it, and another thing entirely to wheel this car, right? Like when you're going 2 wide, 3 wide, like, you really got to respect and get to know the track surface intimately. It's fine, whatever. That was like, Calabogie was scary when we raced there because so the Rice spec had a Civic. It blew up. It dropped oil on the racing line, so they went from the full track to the short track
Stadium.
right? Stadium configuration. The problem with the stadium configuration is turn 1 is now a right-hander instead of a left-hander dogleg. But it's because of the right-hander, you have the wall immediately to your left, and that is the racing line. You want to hug the wall to open up the corner as much as you can. Problem with the RSX is there's a bump right before turn in. And that bump made the car veer toward the wall.
It feels weird, eh? It's like
And
it
so,
warps
and
you in.
yeah, it was like, we were just like, okay, like when we got into the pace of things, we were basically like half a full car width off the wall, because just like, no, it's not worth the risk. Like it's so unsteady. But then, and you guys probably know this. The thing is, once the car takes a set through the corner, all your problems go away. All your problems go away, and then it feels like a proper Honda. You know, it's like it feels like an 8th gen, right? Oh,
Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah.
But then once it's static again, you're like, okay, drive a different car. So somehow, like half of the podcast, I feel like the batting average is literally 50%, where the main topic of discussion is shitting on the RSX. Somehow it always we find a way.
I mean, I own one, but I keep it.
They
for,
look great. It's cool. It's got a great engine. It's got a great transmission. Like, yeah, it's just the front suspension.
Yeah, I just blot that out of my memory and imagine it's like an 8th gen or something.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to spend the whole podcast talking about this, but
It's easy. It's
Yeah.
an easy target. It's
Yeah.
an easy target.
It is.
so there are lots of people that kind of make it work. And the way they make it work is by making the suspension not move.
Yeah.
And then you set it up for that one scenario.
Yeah.
And then everything doesn't deviate too far from it when you stuff super stiff springs in there. And then, you just basically limit the travel. And that's one way, but that's not the preferred way. And
I mean, like, why have suspension at that point in time?
Yeah.
So there are different philosophies. I mean, there are fast RSXs and Civic SIs of the EP3 generation out there, but it's all somewhat compromised in the suspension department to get that car to go around.
And it's not really, you don't have much options to fix it.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. All right. Let's move on to another topic. I feel like the poor RSX is just getting trashed so hard today. Before we get into more of some of your recent endeavors and talking about the FA24 oil pan, I want to give the listeners a little bit more of a flavor of who you guys are, like as individuals and like way back, right? So I want to think about your formative years a little bit, okay? And one of my favorite questions I always ask our guests is what is your first and most vivid car memory? It doesn't have to be about performance vehicles, but what was your first car memory?
Kelvin, do you wanna go first?
Yeah. Where do I even begin? I think for me, something to understand is I kind of grew up as like one of the newfangled digital age car enthusiasts. My parents weren't into it. My family, I mean, the ones that were very far away. So for me, it's really about like cracking open the plastic off of a new copy of Gran Turismo 3 on like sale because the game was super old. And I remember just playing through the game and just opening the setup menu and just seeing a bajillion things going like, what the heck is going on? Like, what does any of this do? And lo and behold, still today, I'm still wondering what any of those do, because it's a rabbit hole. You can infinite understanding through there, and almost near infinite depth to go there. So it's really, really where I came from. Other side from watching Top Gear and Fifth Gear, that was the era for it.
Yeah.
Cool. Mine's a little bit different. My family, I grew up in China, and then came here when I was in elementary school. Car ownership was like kind of rare back then. And then once we came here, it was absolutely necessary. So yeah, my parents had a car, but we didn't really, it wasn't a performance car by any means. But it wasn't until high school that I signed up for this auto mechanic shop class, and it was discouraged by my guidance counselor. But
that's interesting.
Yeah, it was whatever. But there's a guy I remember.
Why do you think they discouraged you?
It wasn't seen as a class to go to if you're academically inclined. Yeah, and I think a lot of it is too bad because there's a lot of trades centric classes that were super cool that I wish I was introduced to sooner.
Yeah,
but
I feel the exact same way.
Yeah, but regardless, I mean, back then, making minimum wage meant something, and you could actually do a lot with that money. I remember a guy, I was in grade 9 or 10, and there was a guy in grade 12 who brought his project car to school. And it was it was like a 1991 Eagle Talon. And it was the all-wheel drive TSI version with the 4G63 engine. And after school one day, he like drove it super aggressively outside of the school and took me for a ride in it. And then I was like, holy shit, I need
this in
more
my
cars in my life. Yeah. And then, the very beginning of the YouTube days, I saw some video of this K20 swapped Civic, like clowning on a Thunderbird or Trans Am. I forgot what it was. It was like, just got a little 4-cylinder in this. I don't know if you guys seen it. And then he just rips it at the light. And I was like, holy shit.
Yeah.
That looks pretty legit. And that looks kind of affordable. I think I can make that work.
Facade.
Yeah.
Facade.
That was the thing. And then little do you know, like how much money you end up dropping in this endless pit.
Yeah.
And it's still not over.
You guys are both case swap.
Yeah. Man.
Gluttons for punishment, man. You do it and then you're like, oh, I can't drive this on the street anymore.
Yeah.
That's what I hear from people all the time. It's like, that's not drivable anymore.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like a Honda Civic is like the gateway drug to all your problems in the future. Every other car enthusiast, if you're not into the Germans, you're ending up in a Honda Civic somehow. And then it just wrecks you.
I'm lucky. I haven't been in a Civic in a while.
I mean, like, this guy just cannot escape Honda Civics. I think one time I went over to his place and there were like 3 of them. Like, where'd you get the third one from? It's like, oh, it's a parts car.
Yeah.
Like, what?
They multiply. Like Honda Civics multiply. You can't just
You see that opportunity, you gotta snag it up. Somebody else will.
Yeah, exactly. And they were so popular and so accessible that it wasn't like it was just like it wasn't a big deal.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you can have multiple Honda Civics and nobody bats a second eye. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, secret club. Well, I do want to talk about your EK Civic a little bit, but before we get there, one other question I want to ask you guys, and I think you kind of touched on this a little bit, but growing up, what were your biggest car and automotive influences? Yeah. Car influence.
I think like, I seen a lot of what is the name of I think it was like DuPont Registry or something. Or this supercar magazine where you can look at supercars for sale.
Oh,
and I remember seeing this at like some local store, and I was flipping through the magazine, and I was like, "Wow, these look."
What part of your life was this?
This was like super young.
Yeah.
Like parents are at the grocery store, and you don't want to deal with that shit, so you go and look at magazines, right? Yeah. And then you see modified, you see these kind of magazines, and you're like, "Cool, I want that. I want to do something with that."
Yeah.
And it kind of was one of the reasons, one of the many reasons why I wanted to pursue a career in automotive engineering. And then just, things slowly fell together. Went to school for mechanical engineering, wanted to work in automotive. And then all these things kind of just lined up.
Yeah.
And then the most accessible thing you could do is mod your shitty car at home as a starting point. And then you just go down the rabbit hole.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think my influences are much less inspiring. When it comes to like car multimedia, I live under a rock. Ping knows this. I just rely on Ping to tell me what's happening. For me, it's like, oh wow, let's open up a copy of RCVD and like read Millikan and Millikan. Like, I know it's not exciting, but that's really my days. Like, that's what I fill my time with, like reading. Ooh, wow, reading a textbook.
Yeah. So it's kind of interesting. Like, you guys, the two of you guys have a pretty interesting dynamic, right? Like, I think personality wise, you a little different. A little different.
Yeah.
Interests a little different. Like, what makes it work? You think? Why do you guys gravitate towards collaborating together?
Yeah. I think our strength and weaknesses kind of complement each other.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly. I mean, there were some shared struggles.
Okay.
That kind of
Expand.
Yeah, I don't know if you want to get into it, but Formula Student is a student design competition in university where usually engineering students, with the help of other faculties, but mainly engineering students, try to build a essentially Formula style go-kart.
Yep.
And then go compete with each other. You can kind of think of it as a one step up from high school drama and all the bullshit that comes with it.
Hey, there's money. There's a little bit of money in there.
Yeah, you're playing with a little bit of money, but it's not like real money, right? It's like, whatever. If I make this thing work, great. If I don't make it work, I'm out of here next year. So, yeah, that brought a lot of shared struggles. I think our ideas of what success looked like there didn't quite align with everybody else, and it was a different thought process. Like,
so you guys were thinking about like continuity and longer term. How do you make this a successful program? Other people are kind of just
what's the coolest thing?
Renter mentality.
Yeah, I mean that's a generalization, but yeah, that's kind of accurate as well.
Yeah.
So what's interesting may not get you the win at the end of the competition.
Like novelty factor versus like actual performance. And
yeah. So I think that's what really bonded us. There were a couple other guys that we, partnered with and or were on the same page with, but that was not the majority of the team. So it didn't quite work out very well.
I think for Ping and I, we both have a very strong understanding is that for us, the fun of this is the performance element. Performance. I mean, if you ever seen the picture of ZK, you'll understand that like style points does not count for anything. It's like the spray paint, like mismatched spray paint on the side of it. And second is just a lot of the skills that we have. We can cover a lot of ground with two minds. Like, for example, the kinematics is not possible without Ping being able to reverse engineer these cars. And then the kinematics also is not possible without me knowing actually how to write my own kinematics program from scratch to perform the analysis. So from from an end to end, the ground we can cover, the problems we can solve together, not, we can do things way beyond what we can do individually. Like, I don't think even this FA24 oil pan, the result, the communication design would be as good as it is today if we worked independently.
Yeah.
And being able to have a very complementary skill set and having a high level of trust to be able to operate in that space and say, like, look, I don't understand what you're doing, but, I gotcha, and vice versa. We come up with some incredible ideas and come up even at the racetrack, like some really interesting ideas that are maybe controversial because no one believes that works. But then, we're making the Civic kind of putt around quasi-competitively. Questionable about that, but it's a little Honda Civic that's getting gridded behind like Corvettes and stuff.
TMP time on the Civic?
We did a 119.
Hey, sub 20, man.
Yeah, sub 20. But
serious times now.
Yeah, but then things happened in our lives, and COVID happened. Or it was maybe the first year after COVID, we did the 119, and then we haven't really gone back and done much more with it just because other priorities have taken over. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of interesting. Maybe not so much the time itself, but it's a very simple build. I don't know if anybody, maybe you guys might know about it, but
we'll flash up a photo.
Yeah. But like, we're talking like cheap parts. There are friends of ours or other people in the area who's gone way beyond what we have and have done about the same, if not a little bit slower still. And I mean, we've been like kind of helping people along the way as well. We made, spring break suggestions to a couple of our friends who have similar chassis. And then it was a highly praised vehicle on the Speed Academy channel. Yeah.
It was featured on the channel.
It was. No, not our car, but the friend's car was featured.
Are you talking about Calvil's car?
Yeah. Calvil was one of them. I gave him a ride and he loved it. And then he had a similar car and there were some, there were similarities and differences. But yeah.
Okay, so I drove Cavil's car at DDT.
Yeah.
I don't know if the changes that you guys suggested are on it, but it was a lot of fun. So great job, guys.
That car's fast.
Yeah, next one. Patrick knows him. Nick. When I first met Nick was running square tires.
You made him do the reverse. Sorry, not reverse staggers, front wheel drive.
You should ask him about it.
Wow. So he's doing, for those who don't know, it's an old like 1991 or something Corolla GTS front wheel drive. He's got 255 in the front, 205 in the rear. Looks like really odd on the street. If you're looking at it from a different lane, it looks like the car is like misaligned, but it's actually like really cool. But also great job. I've driven that car and that car's a lot of fun.
Yeah. These were the very early days. Like I saw Nick drifting his car at TMP and I was like, what the fuck is that? It's a front wheel drive. Why is it drifting? And guess what? He wanted more of that. So I was like, okay, you should stagger your tires. And I ran stagger for a little bit. And then, Nick came with me and he loved it.
Did you also suggest the diameter stagger? Because he's 17 in the front, 15 in the rear. Is that the setup that you have?
I run 17s in the front and 15s in the rear, just because the 15s are cheap at the back.
Yeah.
This goes way back. This is like before 15s had anything wider than a 225. So now, there are 245 15s. And then if you get into Hoosiers, there's like
crazy. They're going to be wider than they are tall too.
275 15?
There are Hoosier tires that you can put in the front of those.
What car runs that?
Yeah, you can put it on a Civic. It just takes out some work in the fenders.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I mean, now there are more options, but back in the day, it was like, if you want to go wider than 225, you had to step up on the sizes. So then we did that. And then there weren't that many tire choices for 16. So just next thing was 17s.
Is Cavil doing that reverse stagger as well?
Cavil is now. I think he did. He ran 245 15s front before, and then I think it's like 225s rears. But he stepped it up to 17s as well now. And the next thing is the brakes. Man. There are some. This is not my. I can't take credit for this, but I heard it from a guy named Jeremy out in BC at the time. I was talking about big brakes. I was having lockup issues on my car, especially with the tire stagger. And then Jeremy was like, hey man, these Genesis Brembos kind of fit on the front of this car. And I was like, oh, tell me more. And then we kind of collaborated a little bit. He gave me more information. And then I made a CAD model of the caliper and all that kind of stuff, and then did some analysis on piston sizes and whatnot. And we made a video on that. But yeah, Jeremy, thank you for the inspiration. And hopefully this persists. It came in like this thing also bolts on to 10th gen Civics, and there's a whole community of people trying to run Genesis Brembos on their 10th gen Civics. And then because Hondas are so plug and play, you can also put that stuff on 8th gens and 9th gens. So the need for the TL Type S type of caliper is no longer really still popular, but it's not as popular anymore because you don't have to drill your knuckles to fit bigger bolts. The Genesis Brembos uses M12s on the front, so it's like just bolt on.
Wow.
Wow. Maybe you have to run a spacer because they're pretty beefy, but like otherwise it's great. I think Cavil's also running Genesis Brembos now.
Wow.
So
changing the
big influence.
One car at a time.
Man, it's
Hyundai parts on a Honda, man. Somebody's rolling over in some grave somewhere.
Yeah, it's just an italic H. It's fine.
Yeah.
It'll fit.
Yeah, still the H. I want to ask you a little bit more about the stagger wheel setup, right? Because like I see like with some super high horsepower cars like Corvettes and whatnot, like you see that, maybe it's smaller wheel diameter in the front, larger in the rear. Front wheel drive, I know people run wider tires and skinnier tires just to get that the turn in, the pull out grip, and then the rotation in the rear. But I haven't really heard too much about running a smaller size wheel in the back.
Okay.
Can you talk, like, obviously I know cost wise, and then, if you find the right compounds to get the rotation that you want, are there other drawbacks to using a smaller wheel in the back?
Sure. Let's talk about it. I don't want to. Yeah. Okay. So there's a lot of conflicting information, and it depends on the car and chassis and whatnot. But from a physics standpoint, if you have more weight on either axle, you need more grip on that axle.
Yeah.
The counter argument to that is if you have a ton of power and you need to put it through the rear axle, then yeah, even if you have a 50-50 weight distribution, you may want to prioritize, that grip on the rear instead of cornering. But in most cars, even high power cars, if you have a 50-50 weight distribution, usually you can get away with square. So in the case of front wheel drives, most cars are in the 60 plus percent front weight distribution. So when you think about it that way, tons of front wheel drive cars go through front tires. Why? Because it's being overworked. So you can distribute that out a little bit. You can start running a bigger, wider tire at first, but then you run into thermal management issues. The rears don't come up to temperature as quickly as the fronts, and thermal management on front wheel drives is a bit of a problem. So what do? You just increase you can increase the thermal mass of it, and alongside with that, when you go to the 17, the diameter gets bigger. There's more rubber, and you can kind of spread that thermal mass over a wider or a bigger chunk, basically.
Yeah.
One of the downsides to running staggered wheel diameter and width is on modern cars when ABS and wheel speeds become a problem. The next thing is, you're running some kind of rake angle. You probably want some kind of aftermarket suspension to be able to adjust for that. Otherwise, you look like you're kind of lifting the front of the car and not the rear. Yeah.
Yep.
So those are the downsides. I would say there's a lot more upside than there's downside. Maybe the other one you can think of is like brake bias, because the OEMs definitely does not design for staggered diameters and whatnot. So ABS, vehicle stability, as well as braking, you need to make some serious modifications before it kind of works. Or if you just get an older car that doesn't have ABS, which is where we are at. But if we have to try it on a newer car, I don't think it would work as well. And a lot of the newer cars, like a Elantra N, Civic Type R, there's a lot of built-in rotation already from the factory, even considering non-stagger tires, like square setup. So on a newer car, if it's designed for performance, it's kind of, you may not need as big of a stagger as what we did to get the car to work. Yeah. And then you don't have to mess around with the suspension, because for the longest time, the way to get front wheel drives to handle is you slap a huge rear sway bar and stiff rear springs just to kind of kill the grip at the back.
Yeah.
But if you run a smaller tire at the back, you don't actually have to make those compromises anymore. And the car just goes over bumps way better when it's not springed crazily. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a huge misunderstanding about grip. Grip is not just suddenly it sticks. Grip is more nuanced than that. You can think of it in terms of the axle stiffness. So you want the relative stiffness between the front and rear axles to be matched to whatever your target is. And the difference between the two relative stiffnesses is your understeer gradient. And then also you can think of it in a nonlinear term in terms of the phasing of where the peak grip occurs, right? So with a tire intermix, it's about trying to get the correct stiffness, balance, front to rear, but also the phasing of the ultimate grip front to rear as well.
Yep.
And tire intermix is a very powerful tool to achieve that. And if you can accomplish both, then you get a car that both feels great on center and one that can do a four-wheel slide. And, one of the biggest validations of that we got it right with this EK is at TMP, Ping loses a little bit of control, and typically you think front wheel drive, you lose it and you just spin and then that's it, game over. And here we are doing a four-wheel drift and he saves it. And I'm like, wait a second, that's a great data point.
Yep.
The steering is straight, the car is literally moving in pure sidestep, and it's kind of nominally trim stable. But there's no crazy moment spinning the car. There's no it's not suddenly torquing back either. And to me, understanding the dynamics of it, I go, okay, we got it right. we're doing something right. And that's kind of the signals, the advantages of understanding.
Yeah.
Like, okay, from just at a high level, what does tire intermix even do? That's one of the tools in the toolbox. Of course, another one is the rear sway bar to do that. And another one I like to use is the pyrometer to just check, how are we using the tire front to rear. And, maybe if you get different temperature readings, for example, front to rear, there is a good reason to say, yeah, I need that extra thermal mass. I need that extra grip. I'm using my front axle too much. How can we kind of alleviate the work being done by that axle?
Yeah. This is why I always tell people about front wheel drive. Having competed in time attack last year in my GTI or my grocery getter, is the front wheel drive car. I don't know what it is about it that just gives you that extra license and motivation when you're at the track to tinker with it by whatever means you can. And I don't know like why it feels this way, but I felt like with the front wheel drive car, you just have a lot more levers that you can and more buttons that you can press in the sense that like doing crazy shit like, wider tires in the front, smaller wheels in the back, running insane tire pressures in the rear, getting the sway bar as stiff as you can, bump stop packers on the front to prevent rollover. Like all that stuff is open. And for some reason, it's just not really in the vibe or the discussion for a lot of rear wheel drive cars. But for front wheel drive, it's just like, I don't know. I don't know if it's like the type of people that it attracts because of the golden age of Honda and like, the late 90s, early 2000s. So they're all front wheel drive cars, and the type of people that they're a little bit more like, wily and grizzled in their experience. And so you get that vibe, whereas like, all the kids who grew up with the BRZs and 86s just don't have that kind of that, like everything's available mentality. Let's just make it work. Right.
Yeah. I think with front wheel drive, the direction, usually from the factory going out of the box, the direction is clear. Like the direction is clear where out of the box, the car is nominally understeering, both maybe linearly and at trim limit.
Mm-hmm.
So the direction is clear. And it's like, okay, how do you get this thing to rotate? And you have at that point in time, it's like you take your gloves off and just do anything you can. For us, I think we took a very thoughtful approach that made sure that we weren't doing anything weird. Like this car is not running crazy tire pressures unless you think like 25, 24 PSI is low. But we're going the opposite direction for some people. We don't run a crazy rear bar.
Yeah.
But there are, if we needed to, we could.
Yeah.
There's kind of leader. I feel like, especially I think when Ping sampled FR, for example, a lot of the balance can be manipulated by the driver. And I think that's what makes it such a fun driver's car, is that even the BRZ, we noticed that was like a little bit understeery at like a push limit. It's very clear push limit. We see that in the pyrometer readings as well. But as a driver, because of just the dynamicism, you can manipulate the balance with the longitudinal dynamics.
Yeah.
There's just a less of a need to go straight direction. Like, okay, more rotation. Like you don't have to do that.
Yeah.
So we don't actually think there's more levers to a front wheel drive. We think so. I think the amount of levers, depending on how modified your car is like on a similar level, is about the same. Like you can play with tire pressures, damping, these kind of things, alignment. Those knobs are available on all cars. But like Kelvin said, there's only so much you can do in a front wheel drive. If the car doesn't rotate on entry, it's not rotating on exit once you apply the power.
Yeah. Man.
So, but for rear wheel drive, you can do more. You can, trailing is the same, but on exit, you can do more. Or in mid corner, you can do more with a rear wheel drive, which is a amazing sensation once you go from front wheel drive to rear wheel drive, is that maybe 3/4 of the rotation happens on entry, but there is still rotation on exit. Whereas front wheel drive, you're not rotating anymore on exit. So
it's only going to pull you straight.
Yeah. So that's probably, that might be one of the reasons where, you can change your driving behavior to get a bit more rotation or get the car to do what you want on a rear wheel drive. Whereas on the front wheel drive, if that entry is not good, the rest of the corner is not good.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense.
Yeah.
It's a great way to summarize it. One more question I have on the Civic before we move on to another topic. So we kind of talk about like, you know, form versus function. How you guys definitely put the premium on the function part, right?
Yeah.
But in terms of, you know, appeal and spreading your message of, you know, offset wheels and, you know, super wide tires in the front and Genesis brake kits and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Making that and spreading that message broadly. But when they look at the Civic and they're like, oh, like, do these guys know what they're talking about? You know, obviously the performance speaks for itself, but you know, people have short attention spans.
Yeah. I think at this point there's like kind of two different schools of thoughts. It's like does the car look good?
Yeah.
And then does it perform? If you can mix the two, then great. I think both Kelvin and I just did not want to put the effort into shining up the car. Yeah, I mean, that's part of it. And then the other part that I find, like from a mechanical design point of view, is that if it's high performance, it inherently has beauty in it.
Yeah. Race car is always show car.
Well, yeah. I mean, like when a race car pulls out the track and there's all sorts of crap on it, I don't think it's actually ugly. I think it's actually perfect.
See, this is exactly why I never wash any of my cars.
Okay, that's a different topic. Okay, like if the paint on the Civic was nicer, I think I would be inclined to wash it more often. But it's already got spray paint on it. Like I'm not, taking it to the car wash is not going to make it look much better.
Yeah.
You called their car ugly in so many words.
Hey.
No worries.
I'm just trying to get him to expound on, you know, the decisions that they made. And
I mean, I think there's also beauty in inflicting emotional damage, passing like Corvettes at TMP. Like we've had people be like, what the heck
What
is
just came by?
Like, did I just get passed by a Honda Civic? I remember like Shannonville, like there's this like Civic Type R and not letting Ping pass, and Ping's just like, you know what? I've had it. YOLO drag race. And we're like passing the guy. I'm like, dude, this is a brand new Honda Civic. What the heck? Like, no, but hey, I dig it. It's like we're inflicting emotional damage on these people who just buy the most expensive thing on the line. We're here like, hey, check out my like shitbox Honda Civic.
Yeah.
The underdog story. You're missing a headlight too, right? For a time you had.
Where's that for the intake?
I don't know if it's missing. It's intentionally maybe a hole. Yeah. One of the headlights has been drilled out, and if you know the K series layout, the intake can be right behind the headlight, and then we boxed it off and made it kind of a intake basically. This is seen quite often in drag racing. You see it a lot actually. People will route their what is it called? Velocity stack. They'll route it right outside the intake, right outside the headlight. It's through the headlight.
Cool.
Yeah. But regardless, the point is that we think a car that performs well is inherently have some kind of beauty to it. I mean, of course, if it can look nice at the same time, great. Yeah. But yeah.
Where do you draw the line though?
Oh,
is there a limit? There's no limit.
Yeah, I don't think there is a limit. So like, okay, so when you think about let's say something that's kind of beautiful and super high performance at the same time, I think about it as the Bugatti. I think this like 3D printed brake caliper. Have you seen it? Have you guys seen this?
Not
3D printed. What is it printed out of?
It's maybe aluminum or titanium. I forgot what it was, but it takes on this.
Wait, it extrudes it as opposed to...
No. It's a laser sintered powder metallurgy part.
Interesting.
Patrick might know what that is, but...
I do not. These are all foreign terms to me.
Okay. Anyways, you guys, maybe we can link a photo of it.
Sure.
It's a very, I would say, non-traditional look to what a brake caliper could be. And I find a lot of beauty in that. And I know they did it for mostly functional purposes. And then there are, some ways they made it look better by painting it and whatnot. But
wait, is this the alien looking?
You might have seen it. Yeah.
Back when I was in engineering school, they had like automatically optimized like CAD where
like
you just
topology optimized.
Was that generated from that sort of technology?
We're not 100% sure what the tool they used is, but
Okay.
it's a organic design kind of principle.
Yeah, it
where-
looks organic. It looks like some alien technology. It's the only way I can like accurately describe it.
Yeah, let me see if I can find one.
Interesting.
Yeah. While he's looking that up, it's interesting that you go to a brake caliper as your example.
This I mean, it happens in more places, but a lot of
Control
it,
arms, I've heard nowadays, full uprights.
yeah, but it's just not as obvious. Even when you think about the body of a car, like I come from a background where I did my master's in crash worthiness, and a lot of car body design is starting to head in that direction. It's just not taken to the same extreme as some of these organic
Is that
shapes.
why grills are so big now?
No. That's
Distribute the load?
No,
Okay.
that's totally different. But yeah, let me.
We're gonna have
let me
to
show you
directly
guys.
ask BMW on that one, and Lexus.
Yeah, so I'm gonna pass my phone around and you can take a look at this.
Oh yeah, it's exactly. Okay, users at home, if you look up the Merrill Hydromock, which is like Merrill's version of a croc, it's very alien looking.
Oh, it looks like that.
Exactly like this.
Have you seen it, Jason?
Let me take a look.
Okay. Like, if you look at it, they kind of blended a traditional caliper to
I see.
this ultra functional version of it, and I think that's like beautiful. And that maybe is the blend that I would love to achieve. Like,
I mean, you basically have to cast this. Like, look at the shapes.
well, it's not cast because you can't really cast that. There are so many undercuts that it would be very difficult to cast, and it's actually 3D printed. So yeah, you see this
kinda
in the
nuts.
motorsports world. There are 3D printed versions of all sorts of stuff now that you just can't achieve through traditional manufacturing.
What
Yeah.
a time. What a time. All right. Let's move on to the topic that we've kind of been teasing you guys with on the FA24 oil pan. Such a fascinating project because there's just so much stuff going on around this. Like, you know, Patrick and I both have a first generation. You know, people say what they want about the motor, but if you maintain it well, it did its thing. Like your motor had, I don't know,
227,000 kilometers and about 80 track days.
yeah. And you know, that's crazy. Mine only had 40,000, but it's still fine. And it's living in your car now, right? So the chassis is good too.
What happened to the previous motor?
It blew up at DDT.
But it was like, interestingly, and maybe I'll ask you about this. What was the cause?
It was so Adam Mann of Man Motorsport, a teammate of mine on our endurance racing team. He's our crew chief and mechanic. He took apart the motor and found that the oil pan made by Moroso was a two-piece that was riveted together. When the rivets failed, they got sucked up the oil pickup.
Oh,
and
okay.
it was the aftermarket part that failed the engine. And now that I have Jason's motor and supercharger in my car, I am baffle free. And of course, I'm adding a little bit more extra oil to it, which I'd actually like to ask you guys a little bit later when we get into this topic of, is that really a viable solution? So
Yeah. So maybe I can give the background on it.
Sure.
I've been, like both Kelvin and I saw the performance envelope of the first gen and second gen twins. And both of us were like, why are we messing around with the Civic still? But one of the major detractors from, myself personally, from picking up a second gen was the discovery of the oil starvation issues. At first, it was like RTV, and then it was like, okay, well, you can clean that, and then it'll be good to go. And then oil pressure drops, which is more significant and kind of concerning because you know, like this is a very high speed moving component. Well, the freaking engine is spinning pretty fast. If lubrication has an issue, catastrophic failure occurs. So if there's inherent design flaws with the lubrication system and you can't fix it, either by OEM or aftermarket, then that was like a major red flag for us. So at first we saw, you know, people are testing baffles. We're like, oh, whatever. Baffles usually the solution to most car oil problems. And then if not, you just add more oil, right? Like it's okay. You can overfill it. But then people are still blowing them up. And even the cars that did testing with baffles didn't really show a significant improvement. So then, we waited. It was like a year, 2 years after COVID. So we're like, whatever, we can wait a little bit more, see what comes out of the aftermarket. A year after release, people started saying, oh, there are companies starting to work on this problem. I think it was like, I don't want to name drop, but there's another Subaru engine oil pan maker or multiple that tried to come out with solutions. And the stuff that came out weren't really satisfactory. I guess we just got tired of waiting. and then Kelvin and I looked at each other, and Kevin, who's a second gen owner, looked at each other. We're like, okay, maybe we have enough engineering knowledge to like tackle this. Yeah. Let's see what we can do.
And so I'm just gonna interject. So the whole reason why you went down this path to making this product was so that if you come up with a suitable solution, that would enable you to then feel okay about investing into the platform and buying this car. So what I'm hearing is, once you guys release your product and it's validated, you're gonna buy an 86.
I would. Yeah, I would. It'd be interesting. It would be interesting.
Hold them accountable to this.
Yeah. It would be interesting story for sure. And some people might call us crazy because like we're doing all this work just to buy this car. Basically, if you think of it that way.
You haven't even bought the car yet.
Yeah. So inspiring.
Oh, man. Yeah, we're getting close. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of funny because this, like, if we were to buy the car, it's definitely going to the track. And I think that's the use case that we kind of wanted to address. If you just bought the car to putt around, to daily drive and the occasional like spirited drive, I don't think you're actually going to have much of a problem with just the overfill and some of the other modifications you can do to make this better. Mm-hmm. But if you're seriously tracking the car and modding it, the stock setup is just not enough. Yeah. And unfortunately, it wasn't as big of a deal in the first gen, so they never addressed it in the second gen. If anything, it got worse.
So this is what I wanted to ask, right? Like what did change between the two generations such that it's such a noticeable issue now?
Yeah, so that's we can't pinpoint it to one thing. There are many changes within the engine. We hypothesize a couple things. One is that the oil capacity of the second gen is lower than the first gen by about 400 milliliters. Like it's
significant. That's like,
it's probably a whole oil cooler.
It's 10%.
Yeah. I mean, that's one thing. The next thing is that second gen puts out more power, more torque. So technically, all the bearings are experiencing a little bit more stress. I don't think there's upsizing of the bearing sizes throughout. Like they increased the bore size and kind of went with it. There's some changes in the head and whatnot, and intake and exhaust, blah, blah, blah. But like ultimately, Subaru motors run hot, and oil viscosity on both generations is recommended at 0-20, which we don't think is enough for track use.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Toyota, I believe this is in the GR Cup Car manual, mandates 0-50 for racing purposes. So obviously, even the OEM was able to see that whatever they recommend for street use.
0-50, I heard 1060.
Is it 1060?
I don't know. That was the number that I had in my mind. That, right?
Yeah. Anyways, we just know that it's way thicker than 0-20. Like 0-20 is not sufficient for track use. The fact that first generation cars also had raw knock issues was less frequent, but also a problem. Mm-hmm. Right? So it wasn't, and there are lots of videos online now, like guys in California are showing that first gens have oil pressure dips, but they recover much faster than second generation cars.
Yeah, our endurance car, we've sort of just lived through it where like we used to have an AccuSump, still with the AccuSump saw oil pressure dip. So we're like, okay, this is just a point of failure. So we've removed the AccuSump, and now I think we're left with just in a baffle in the pan and some oil cooling, like a heat exchanger, and that's about it.
Yeah. So we'll look at that later. But Adam and I and Nick have been talking. They're interested in a large capacity oil pan as well.
Yes, we are.
So we'll take a look at that later. Yeah. But so next thing is that flat engine. Like this is boxer engine. Boxer engine inherently has more gaps and more dead space inside versus a inline. And then because of the boxer design, the oil return path is, I would just say, more restrictive, I guess, and less direct. Whereas gravity is helping you in most inline setups to pull oil back into the sump. In a boxer engine, there's more dead space, where when I say dead space, it's like random places that oil can pool and not be able to return back to the sump, or it takes a while, like watching oil flow on a flat surface. Doesn't really, even if you apply a little bit of angle, it still takes longer than if you just drop it straight down to.
Well, that's what you want, right? You want adhesion to the metals.
Yeah. I mean, that's the other problem, but that's okay. That's just the property of the oil. But the point is that this engine, like once you start moving it around, once you start subjecting it to G's, there's a lot of residual oil that gets stuck in various places. I don't want to say just the heads, because the timing cover is another big empty space. And then there's a lot more oil passageways through this block than there are in an inline. So then the next thing, it's like, because of the flat setup, once you start sloshing the oil around, it gets all over the place. And there's just more places for it to get stuck at. And when you run the engine, the oil level is actually pretty low inside the sump. And then once you start sloshing it around, it's even worse. Mm-hmm. So, easy thing you can do, just add more oil. But the problem is that it starts getting into the intake. It starts getting pulled into the engine and burnt off. So you'll know you added in too much once you start smoking out the exhaust pipe, or while on track, you won't really see it. But the next time you started the car, it'll puff some smoke. Yeah.
I saw that a lot with our friend Jason Lee's car at the track this year.
Yeah.
He was like, what's happening? What's wrong with my car? Is the engine blowing again?
Jason's trying to make sure he doesn't blow a second engine, because he already blew one. And he knows to extra overfill now.
Yeah. So here's the thing with that I'm thinking about with overfilling is, obviously we would say it's a beneficial thing for the purpose, right? That we're trying to achieve, of tracking these cars reliably and saving it from, starving the bearings of oil and whatnot. But that advice without caveats to people who are just looking for a solution can be a little bit dangerous, because you get to a critical level and then it becomes catastrophically detrimental to your engine, right? So one of the things that I've been told before, when we were thinking about for our K for endurance racing, how much oil should we use? Should we overfill a little bit? And our crew chief mechanic, our friend Dan Tran, was like, well, we don't want it to be so much that the oil starts cavitating, right? And starts whipping, and literally you get a engine oil frothy latte, where it's just air in the oil, right? So what would you say to people who are thinking about overfilling? What's the right amount?
There's a limit. I think on a stock second gen BRZ, you're somewhere around 700 milliliters. So not a full quart, which is 900 something milliliters, but you're somewhere between 700 or so above the full mark on the dipstick. That's what we've seen. Yeah. We heard of other people adding a bit more.
Yeah. A whole liter?
Yeah, a whole liter. But I think a whole liter, you will start running into some burn issues.
Okay.
But it's somewhere between 700 and a liter. Somewhere in there is a good amount. But
this is just information that's been collected from what people have done, right? And it's not really looking at okay, where's the oil going? And
I have a question from the perspective of, if you add a oil cooler on top, when you empty the oil, maybe you have experience with this, to do an oil change, how much of obviously there's going to be some that remains
Yeah.
inside the cooler.
Yeah.
But how do you account for that when you're, adding your theoretical 700 mils?
So yeah, once you add a oil cooler, it kind of changes things because now you have some additional passageways and additional places that the oil can sit. So if you really want to do it cleanly, you can undo your oil cooler and then drain whatever's in there out as well. But I mean, for high performance purposes, you're probably way before the oil change interval anyways.
Yep.
So it's probably not a problem. But the point is that if it's dead space or like a part of the passageway, you definitely want that to be filled. So maybe check your oil level after the car has been running for a bit so that all those passageways are free of air. Then add your oil accordingly. But yeah, I mean, usually the capacity is just plus the volume of the oil cooler if the oil hasn't been drained out of the car.
Mm-hmm.
If you drain it out of the car, then add that in.
Okay.
Additional. Yeah.
Cool tech tip.
I mean, this is just basic stuff. Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about the process of designing this pan. Now I know you guys, it's pre-release, right?
Yeah.
There's not a product available for sale yet, so I know that you want to be conscious of it, like how much you share, because it's the wild, wild west out there right now, and I think a lot of companies are still looking at this problem, and definitely respect that you guys want to have an offering available before spilling the beans. But with that in mind, like, are there any like higher level philosophies in the design or anything in the revisions that you've kind of gone through that you can kind of share for the audience?
Yeah, for sure. I don't think we went through some kind of novel design process, or I don't think our process is deviates from the norm. We just think that what we did is what a traditional engineering design process would look like. We are iterating on the design. We're in the iteration. We finished the iteration phase, and now we're in the actual like manufacturing phase. But design iterations, I think it's important, and getting that first prototype you make, depending on how far you are from the best solution there is. That's where the extra time comes in. If you can get very close to like a good enough solution, you don't have to iterate that many times. But if you're really far away, or if you've taken the wrong requirements or wrong constraints along the way, or if you cut corners, then it takes way longer to get to a solution. And you kind of see this with baffles. Like baffles by themselves is not the solution. And the amount of companies and time that's been spent on making baffles and installing baffles, we just think it's a waste of time without the increased capacity. Yeah, it's that combination that what you want to do. But yeah, from a design perspective, I don't think we're doing anything special. I think we just approached it from like a traditional design process point of view.
Like I think like a key differentiator, I think, with the solution is the design validation. We keep on talking about design validation testers, get the data, and we're doing our homework. Like just because you have an object you can slap on your car doesn't mean it's going to be good or effective. So for us, as Ping talks about going through the engineering process, for us a lot of towards the end was just figuring out, like, is this a solution? Are we happy with this level of performance? Like every single time, some of the prototypes, I go to Ping, I'm looking at the data, like, are you happy with this? As a designer, as technically my engine guy, are you happy with this?
What's with the quotes?
Well, he's not my engine builder. He's not my engine builder. So usually, if I was thinking of this professionally, to be an engine guy who looks at this dedicated. So Ping is just like generic stand-in for everything. But for sure, it's there's no real secret. Like, look at the problem, look at the constraints you have, and come up with a solution and test it.
Your main qualifier is oil pressure.
Yes, and a little bit, we did the oil analysis, so that's a secondary indicator. And hopefully, once we get some pans out, we can start understanding a little bit the long-term behavior of, is this going to be the absolute solution? Because of course, even in our data sample, we saw, there is pressure loss. But have we reduced the pressure loss substantially enough to say that we are protecting the engine for the life of the engine? We're starting to get into that territory, we think, at least. But, these things you have to test. We don't have an engine dyno that can run 24 hours for like 6 weeks and years on.
Yeah.
And I know you guys did some testing at Motorsport Grand Prix track, which probably, like, at least in Canada for sure, the highest sustained G corners that you're going to be able to find. And honestly, North America wide, it's probably one of the best as well. I'm thinking like, turn 8, turn 2, turn 4. All those are just super demanding, long corners.
Yeah.
What can you say about the Delta?
Yeah. We can say that right now the product that we took to production would enable us to run the car at GP without at least me worrying about the engine. So as long as it's performing how we are expecting it to, we're comfortable driving that car and continue to test that car. And I think the owner of the vehicle, Kelvin, does intend to continue racing or start to performance drive that car. And then once we can once we get the finalized version, the production version on his car, he would also be comfortable with the way the car behaves right now.
Yeah.
And for a long time we were very concerned about modding that car because we didn't know at what point you would run into a problem. We did not do any testing with that car with a stock oil pan and 200 treadwear tires.
Yeah, he didn't put grippy tires until I guess I saw it on Jason's video.
Yeah.
Shout out that video, by the way.
Yeah.
Until it speaks to the level of trust, though, right? Like, you guys don't even own the first test car.
Man, that was
somebody else, and he trusted you guys, and
There's
you know-how enough, right?
There's a story there. It took a lot of convincing.
Oh yeah,
it wasn't.
Who's the sales guy between the two of you?
We had a lot. Like, Kevin and I had a lot of conversations about this.
Yeah,
and like, basically, I promised him if I blew it up, I would at the very least help him fix it. So
I was expecting I'll get him a new crate motor. It's like, no, I will at least help him fix it.
Yeah, but there were like that was the bare minimum. But there were more. There were a lot more that we basically said we would do.
Yeah.
Including the cost of covering an engine.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's a bare minimum. It's not our car, first of all, and then the fact that Kevin was able to let us do this testing with his car, does say a lot.
Yeah.
And it was a lot of trust from Kevin's side. And to this point, we haven't blown it up yet. We set some good times at GP.
Yeah, we don't need to be inflating Jason Lee's ego anymore on this pod. Okay, this pod's primary goal is to entertain people and to inform people. Secondary goal is to knock down Jason Lee progressively every single episode, like our last one.
Jason did not do the best he could, but he did a good enough.
He did tell me to get you guys to give him a shout out. So there you go.
He told me to give him a shout out too. That's why I plugged the video. All right, he's not talking to any of us pre-pod, man. That's crazy.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, Jason did a pretty good lap, like a very respectable lap time with that car. And we analyzed that data extensively. It wasn't like a one lap wonder. We had a whole days of lapping that day.
Yeah.
And we were pretty happy with all the results. So that's when we decided to take it one step further and start the production process. Otherwise, I think we would have needed another iteration if it wasn't. But that's the thing. Like, I think we're very close to the limit of a stock setup. Like, there's just not that much room underneath that car.
So your constraints are packaging amongst like the under tray exhaust.
Yeah. There's only so much space down there. And we're not getting into like really fancy manufacturing processes. There are some constraints that limits how big we can go.
Yeah. If someone were to try to tackle this problem from the ground up, similar to you guys, what do you think the most, like, the biggest problems are going to identify fairly quick? Like, are there some things that are going to be fairly quick, like the packaging where it fits, but were there some like hidden things that kind of reared its head later on? You're like, oh,
I mean, we had conversations about maybe some of the particulars of that platform. We were many multiple late nights scouring through technical documentations. Like, wait a second. Like, one thing that we learned was the roping effect of the timing chain, and maybe as one hypothesis of why we only see the oil starvation occur on right hand turn.
what's the roping effect?
Yeah, so I can explain it. There's a FA20 development paper for the first gen BRZ, FRS, whatever, where there's a specific CAD image where it showed the roping effect of the timing chain. So they Toyota, Subaru expected there to be oil within the timing cavity, and one side of the engine, the timing chain, because of its gaps and whatnot, would actually pull oil back to the center of the engine, and it would help it drain back into the sump.
Mm.
And then on the other side, which happened to be happening on right-hand turns, does not go in that direction because it goes the opposite.
Oh, it's the opposite. Wow. Wow.
And then there was a purposely cast in, or like whatever, manufacturing feature on the timing cover that kind of allows the oil, if it were to drip off the timing chain, to kind of flow back into the sump.
Huh.
We don't think that effect is nearly as strong on the other side of the engine.
That makes sense.
And also the timing chain's going in the opposite direction, so it's not as helpful. This is one of many problems in the car. I mean, like, there's asymmetries to the engine, but it's not nearly as significant as something like this. And we can maybe link that paper somewhere. You can take a look. There were a lot of very interesting informations on there. It was clearly called out that oil starvation in corners was a design constraint and design consideration for the engineers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, automotive conspiracy theories where it's like,
Yeah.
there was this internal document.
Yeah,
They knew.
There's only so much you can do. We can speculate, but at the end of the day, like, we're going through these details, just trying to, again, validate
Understand.
our understandings. Like, are we thinking in the right way? Is our findings consistent with what's happening in reality? And sometimes unpacking it kind of like starts a new thread of thought that allows us to come up with a solution that's better. I think there's one where I challenged Ping's assumption on some aspect of the design, and it resulted in some very fancy graphics where I show some phenomena. I'm not going to detail specifically what it is, but we looked at it and we're like, oh, okay, so maybe Ping's assumption of like how you're specifically baffling this is incorrect.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, we have a hypothesis, we go test it, and lo and behold, it was true.
Yeah. There were a lot of this engine in general. I think it's cheap for what it is.
So expensive, though.
This whole chassis and this whole car is designed to a budget. And they did a great job covering, I would say, like 95+% of use cases.
Mhm.
And then you have the people that have to push the envelope of performance on this car.
Dang it, that's us.
Yeah, it's us. I know. We're not happy with.
We have the highest expectations.
Yeah.
And
the lowest budget.
and the lowest budget. The ideal customer. When they built this car, they had us in the boardroom. It's like, this is who we're making this car for. Not at all. Not at all.
So, like we like anybody that's tracking this car is kind of pushing that limit. If you're a experienced driver and you start modding this car, you're definitely operating beyond that limit. And
So-
that's where the problem starts arising.
What would you say to the teams that are already fielding these cars in wheel-to-wheel races on slicks, or like I've done 2 endurance races now in 2 different second gens.
Yeah.
I believe to be both unmodified from like the oil pan perspective.
Yeah.
Are they just walking the line? Like they're just
I wouldn't say you're walking the line. Like, okay, very first thing, like most of those cars are not running 0-20 oil. You already are adding somewhat level of protection with thicker oil. Next thing is that most of those cars are, I don't want to guess, but most likely they're running coolers.
yes.
Next thing is that, are they overfilling?
That I can't confirm.
Okay, so as a general, like, people that are taking them to the track, at least check your oil. Like, don't be underfilled, and then ideally overfill by at least like 500 mil, if not more. And then there are other provisions, like in GR Cup, I believe, even though it's a stock oil pan, there's some kind of baffling inside, which helps, but is not it's not gonna cover everything. Yeah.
Is the baffle being an imperfect solution, is that because it's not effective at holding it inside the sump, or is it the return becomes blocked? Or?
Yeah. So the issue is that just the baffle only works if there's still oil there, and then once you pump it dry, there's no amount of baffling.
Like, what are you?
Right.
What are you?
And then it becomes an
thinking?
impediment.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, there are things you can do to make it better, but we haven't seen any one solution or any combination of solutions that says, hey, this is now a solved problem.
Right, right. I guess I've just been lucky that I've been, racing these cars with experienced teams, so they probably know all of these things already. So we're trying to cover up the entry level person who's coming in, sees all these flashy products and tires they can throw in the car, without having some of this prior knowledge to how these engines behave. So you guys are sort of filling in that gap, like they can run safely and go as they please.
Yeah, the next thing is that, you see guys are installing AccuSumps. They're a band-aid to the problem. It doesn't solve the problem inherently, but it kind of covers it up if you have a oil starvation event. While we were testing, while we were at GP, we saw a first gen show up running stock oil levels and oil grade. He was running 020, and he had, I think, like RE71 RSs. And I think 2 or 3 hours into the track day, he was towed away, and we had a chat with him, and he had Ronak at GP, first gen. We believe he ended up at 13 Motorsports. We believe, because that's the recommendation we gave him.
Yeah,
but
that's a good
like it's not, if you're just taking the car as is, putting grippy tires on it, and just like showing up to the track. Don't do that. Like, do some basic level of
maybe it's just not GP. I think in DDT you probably get away with it.
Maybe, but like
the sustained. It's
a sustained.
It's a sustained.
But there is at least one sustained right-hander at DDT.
Yeah, we saw a problem with the car at turn 2. This is when we were validating our first prototype. It was bad to a point where even with additional capacity, like with the amount that we added, wasn't quite enough. And then the second iteration of the pan had a lot more volume, like even more volume.
Yeah, I think you were caught off surprise. That was a fun one. I was like, you're starved. It's like, of all corners, it's gonna be the bowl.
Yeah, the bowl at DDT is hard on that FA engine.
24, yeah, for sure.
Is it also because of the banking?
So the banking allows you to corner a bit more. Like you see higher G forces because of the cornering, because of the banking. Not necessarily just because of the banking, but that's also a like beyond 90 degree. It's not just a 90 degree corner. It's like 120, maybe 110, 120 degree corner.
Really?
Almost a whole hairpin.
It's not quite a hairpin, but it's like a longer than a 90 degree, and you go in with quite a bit of speed.
Mm-hmm.
You're holding on to pretty high G limit, actually.
Yeah,
through that corner.
It's 100 km/h min speed on a grippy tire car.
Yeah. Or more. If you can carry a bit more speed, if you can extend that out, you can get it up a little bit higher, and you're accelerating all the way out of it.
Or even before the apex.
Way before the apex.
Yeah.
So you're on power. You are carrying a decent amount of speed. You're carrying a good amount of grip as well, like lateral G's. And that's a very demanding situation for the oil system.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the actual production run that you guys are doing. So is the plan, because I know you had like a call for like testers, right? You want to do some testing through the winter months, kind of looking at California, I'm guessing, right? To get some people out there to test for the next couple of months. Is the idea to do like a smaller run where you can get some beta testers to run it, or are you going to make it like on this run, like available for everyone?
Let's talk about maybe the development process. You don't want to go from nothing to mass production right away.
Yeah.
There are steps. At the very least, once you have a prototype, you want to produce a small batch of production parts.
Yep.
You would quality test them, make any adjustments to tooling if you need to, and validate that the production process is giving you the product that you want. So this is pre-production. You would call this pre-production, where you would sample a small batch quantity, probably like 10, 20, before you go into a mass manufacturing phase. So we're looking at this right now from a quality evaluation point of view, manufacturing quality, manufacturing design, and then the full logistics and all of the auxiliary stuff of running a business. I think this is something that we knew it was going to be a challenge, but we didn't realize how big of a challenge this is. So that's why we're kind of slowing down a little bit here. While the parts are being manufactured, we're trying to basically set up all of our infrastructure here. Running a store, setting up bank accounts, like all these kind of business side things.
Yeah.
But I think I think at the end of the day, we want to do right by the community. It's like I think the community deserves a solution, and we definitely don't want to disappoint. When we talk about our dissatisfaction with the aftermarket, just in general, not even related to the platform, we want to be different. We want to make sure that when we do come out with a solution, that we commit to the customers. This is what you see is what you get, and the performance that you should expect, that you can take your GR86 and enjoy it. That's really what we want to do. And if that means taking an extra week, an extra month to do it right, to make sure that people get the product that solves their problem fundamentally, we won't compromise on that quality.
I think that's really impressive that you guys are taking this like such a methodical approach, right? Because I wish it weren't true, but I would say like in the aftermarket space, like a product like this, usually like another design company might just like do like one test day on one car, and that's enough data to make the run. Right.
It really depends on what it is. If you're making, I don't know, billet lug nuts, maybe it's less strenuous than if you're making a oil pan, where literally a mistake in manufacturing could cost you an engine. And this is the where the quality focus really comes in, because if you were to lose an engine due to oil starvation, because you drove super fast, you're like, okay, that's too bad. But if you installed the aftermarket oil pan and then you blew up your engine because of it, we would never be able to live with ourselves.
That's not acceptable. That's creating a problem for the customer. We're here to solve the problem for the customer.
So then I guess my logical next question is like, why take on this level of risk, right? Like you worked out something with Kelvin, and you're feeling pretty good about this. Now you're making this, and you're very aware of the risk, right? And again, like some manufacturers might have a very optimistic view of things. It's like, no one's gonna have any problems, and if they do, like maybe we'll respond to it or something, or it's like, oh no, user error. Why not just make like shift knobs or something? No offense to people who make shift knobs. Like people need shift knobs, but why take on this level of risk in your first product?
I think like we saw this as an opportunity. I saw this at the very beginning as a way to get into the platform. I didn't want a compromised platform from the beginning, and the community kind of echoes that as well. Like we've actually seen quite a good spread of, our video information in the community.
Yeah.
And I think everybody that owns this vehicle is kind of like fed up with the lack of a solution. And there's so many enthusiasts that are just waiting for something to happen here.
Yeah.
And we want to be that solution. We know there's a lot of risks involved. And that's why we're going through this level of detail and scrutiny to make sure that our product actually holds up. This is, I guess, if you do your due diligence and you prepare for, the potential problems, this is the best path forward.
Yeah. What are some of the messages that you guys been receiving from the community? Any funny stories?
Oh, tons of them. We get like, oh, this is awesome. Like you're doing what the manufacturer is supposed to do.
Yeah.
When can I buy it? Like take my money. And then of course, like, will this fit my headers? We're still trying to figure that out. Will fit aftermarket headers. But, it's so great that, we're trying to put our best foot forward and we're trying to be as positive as possible about this solution. And it's just so fantastic to see people come back and reflect the positivity back at us and say, you know what, you can do it. Someone's taking on the risk, taking on the challenge. And for us, I think, we don't back down from a challenge. We made an EK Civic kind of go fast around TMP. We can do other things too. And I think for us, it's the enjoyment being able to solve challenging problems, especially one as high profile as the FA24 oil starvation, and use our knowledge and to be able to share our knowledge to, just make lapping more fun, more accessible, make these cars actually drivable for people instead of having like being worried. Like it's no fun. Like on a lapping day, you're always looking at your oil pressure all the time. That's no fun.
Yeah. When you have mechanical sympathy for the car, it's tough to enjoy. There are days where I know like I'm driving around a problem. It's like I don't know what's gonna happen. But then like I remember some track days where like you're just so focused on the driving, you're just like you keep pushing it. It's tough on the car, but it's just not in your headspace, and it's just so enjoyable. Right? Where you don't have to worry and have that thought in the back of your mind. It's like, always listening. Always like, what's that noise? What's that noise?
Every driver, Jason wants to go faster. Let's focus on going faster. Let's not talk about like oil starvation. Like let's actually do some setup and development work. Let's actually work with you to set even faster time at GP. I think that's what it should be about, especially if you're at the track and driving there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I think that sums it up pretty well. Like we're really hoping to be able to put this issue to bed.
Yeah.
And see what this platform can really do. Yeah. Because I think there's more. There's a lot more hidden potential in this platform. But with some of these setbacks, people are not willing to push as hard on their second gen.
This is the rate limiting step here.
Yeah.
But even then, I think Ping's been spoiled, caught the FR bug now. So, I think Ping's journey.
You gotta remember where you came from.
Yeah, okay. Ping's driving career. I think could use some FR work.
So yeah,
it's okay. You got a lot of FR drivers here. Yeah. So yeah, we'll teach you the ways of the FR. Patrick, our boy Patrick, has had one too many drinks.
Yeah, we might have had a pre-game meal.
So yeah, the past couple of months have probably been like super exciting for you guys, right? Like going on this manufacturing journey, and because of, again, like you've now seen like the communication channel, distribution channel online is just so fast. You get feedback so fast. People are interested so fast, and I think as new manufacturers, like we're in this age where like that energy coming back from the community can really motivate you too, right? Which is really exciting to see. So, let's fast forward a couple of months down the line. These pans are ready and they're out there, and it's a huge success. What's next? Where do you go from there?
There are some like cross-platform compatibility here. The first generation, I feel like still needs a solution. There's band-aids out there, but there hasn't been a one-stop solution for the first gens yet. So we're looking at potentially an opportunity there. And then we're also looking out for other opportunities. There are, I mean, if you have any interesting problems or other, I don't know, whatever vehicle issues, let us know. We're kind of interested in finding something else that we can flex our knowledge on.
Yeah, I think for us, we're happy to take on some high profile platform issues.
Yeah.
That the community may see. We just know of the GR86 one because
More
of how
intimately,
high profile it is. But hey, look, between that Formula Delta, like we got like tons of experience. So throw us the next challenge. We don't know what it's going to be, but we're open to solving something.
Yeah. So we'll see where that goes. But our friend Patrick here has access or is racing a first gen that may need some help in that department. So so we'll be looking at that for sure.
Yeah, my BRZ as well, my personal street car and our endurance car and all of the FRS community that I've met over the past few years. It's a 10-year-old platform. And for it to not have like a really one-stop solution.
Yeah.
You guys are coming in a little. It's not late.
We're
it's
pretty
on
late,
time.
actually.
it's on time for me because I'm already down one motor.
Yeah.
And maybe your pan could have solved it if you just invented it a little sooner. So
Yeah.
for
It's
nothing.
funny. It's funny because another friend of ours, Chris Basson, has been scouring
give him
Facebook.
that
little French.
French accent of the song.
He's been scouring the internet for a blown up first gen to build. And you still see these.
Wow.
Yeah, you
There's
still
one
see.
back here.
Yeah,
It's white.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Yeah.
He's making fun of my car. Just been sitting there.
But
We're getting
even-
working on it soon.
But even now, like you still see raw knock motors all over the place in secondhand markets.
Do you think that as track enthusiasts, our expectations of oil problems and the reliability has just gotten to the point where we as consumers are too complacent, and it's almost like blown engines at the track is a bit of a badge of honor of sorts, right? That you're like, yeah, man, I drove it so hard it exploded on me, right? Like I just feel like when you get into the car hobby, everyone talks about it's like, yeah, engine's knocking, it's like, oh yeah, bearing failure. And it's just like we've become so like numb to it that like, I don't know, are as consumers are our expectations too low now?
I mean, my answer is no. I think aftermarket should demand more of aftermarket, a higher level of performance, higher level of competition. Like even from a marketing perspective or a business perspective, competition's good. As a racer, as someone who's an enthusiast driving their car, it means more options, more product at more competitive prices. So no, I think you should hold us to it. Like definitely hold us to a high level of standard.
Yeah.
You should hold everyone to a high level of standard because you deserve it. You're paying us all this money, or your vendors all this money. You should demand a very extremely high level of performance from whatever you buy.
Yeah. Especially like from the manufacturer here. Like this is designed to be a spec car.
Yeah.
The fact that it's having these issues is definitely a detractor. There's online debate on this. Like, yeah, it's not a Porsche. There's been lots of comparisons made saying, hey, Porsche has solved this on their Boxer engine. Why can't Subaru solve this? But you're not paying Porsche money for this car.
Mm-hmm.
So like, it's unfortunate because I think given more budget, I'm sure the manufacturer could have done something here.
Yeah.
But it's definitely like this car is basically entry level sports car. Like I don't know. There's not many more FR entry level sports cars available right now.
No, not at this price point. It's kind of a bit of a unicorn. For sure.
So even if you need an aftermarket solution to make this better, we still think it's a very like high potential platform.
Yeah. it's very easy to to look at a manufacturer and they advertise the vehicle for track use. They put all the pictures and media on them of these cars on the track and they advertise it as track ready, like literally in those exact verbiage.
Yeah.
But when you think about holding the manufacturer accountable to that, a lot of people tend to forget the real like decision makers, and a lot of manufacturers are not the you guys are not the engineers.
Yeah.
Right. They're
sure.
they're the
I
penny
mean, we joke about like who is the persona in the boardroom, right? I bet you underneath, there's a photo of Patrick, on there, and then it'll say, Patrick loves everything about racing, but will never have the courage to actually show up at the track. That's probably the persona that they're going for, because those people want to buy into the dream
yes
of owning it and experiencing it on the road, but like in reality, they're probably never going to go to the track. Like I guarantee you, from a marketing perspective, that's what they're saying.
Oh, absolutely.
Right?
How many like time and time again?
Yeah.
Oh, I bought this car. It's got a sub 7-8 minute at the Nürburgring. How many
Yeah.
Cobalt SS owners do y'all see at the track these days? But that's like one of the first things. It beat the GTR at the track. Those guys aren't the ones bringing it to the track, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you do see quite a couple of these cars at the track because it's like a pretty affordable entry option. But yeah, like most people will graduate to something else or whatever once they start making more money. But like, yeah, we want to be somewhat affordable on this front. So we're looking at this platform specifically. And yeah, if we can solve this problem and have it not ruin a season or like a car or an engine, then yeah, let's do that.
Well, we were talking about at least the goals for Numi Racing as an organization, as a team trying to push the boundaries of racing. We wanted to go to do the 25 hours at Thunder Hill.
Yeah.
And one of our main detractors from, immediately just jumping there is obviously the cost of getting there is so high. So why spend all that money to show up on a car that has an inherent problem? So if that can be solved.
It's
Buy those tickets now.
yeah, we're all trying to keep things reasonable and make the most of things. But yeah, it's just sometimes just the economics of it just doesn't make it worthwhile to say commit to blowing up your
Exactly.
What is it, like 25 hours of blowing up your engine at the end?
Yeah.
No one wants to do that.
Just give us 25 hours and 30 seconds.
Yeah.
That's hard to. That's very difficult to do.
Yeah. So hopefully we got you with hopefully an FA20.
Well,
coming up.
It's very clear that you guys do all of your homework. Like I don't. It's very easy to look at a lot of the aftermarket manufacturers putting out parts, and quite often you get sort of the same, especially with like suspension components. Like it's the same template part, different paint, different sticker. It's all under the same manufacturer. Same thing with like wheels and stuff. But you guys are entering a space that, like you said, there's not really been a solution since the first generation of this car over 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And to have the sort of knowledge and expertise that you both have had from both like educational and work experience, there's so much confidence in what you guys are doing, and the time it takes for you guys to do this. It's not rushed. Absolutely not.
Yeah. Like we've been looking at CAD for quite some time, and I'm very excited to actually get the final product in my hands.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We should have a launch party. Serious, man. We should do it.
Here at Driven?
Yeah, sure. Why not? Yeah, let's do it. I'm sure Enrique would love that. Yeah. Put it on his car, up on the hoist. People take a look, whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, so on this topic, right? Recent news, I think in the past couple of days, class action lawsuit was filed by someone. I think they're only seeking like $5 million of damages for the collective of people who are affected. And meanwhile, people are also speculating that for the next generation of the 86 and whether there's even going to be a BRZ, like is Toyota just going to be like, they've built obviously the 3-cylinder turbo that's in the GR Corolla, the GR Yaris. A lot of people are thinking like, why not? Why not? But if they do that, like, is there going to be a BRZ? You guys have any speculation on where this is all going to land?
That's a really tough one. Let's let's maybe take a step back and think about where this car sits in the Toyota lineup or the Subaru lineup. This thing's cheaper than a WRX, right? It's like marginally more expensive than a Corolla. When you look at the price point of a GR Yaris or GR Corolla, I don't think transplanting that engine in here would make this platform more attractive, or like at least financially, it's going to go up in cost. Even if a next iteration of this car model, like a third generation, there's already emission issues in Europe, where I think it's the UK, or I forgot where it was, but one of the UK or like European countries already stopped selling this car because it couldn't meet the next set of emissions. So is it possible there's a third generation? I think yes, but it will be different. It'll be very different. Whether that's the 3-cylinder turbo with that, which costs a lot more, but I don't think that would be the case because I don't think it packages well into this car. This super low hood design just doesn't have that much space underneath it. And
Wait, they can't just do like M2 competition bolt? You know, people wouldn't like that.
that's a great question. I don't know actually, because I think there's limits to where automotive trends are going. There will always be an enthusiast car, but it might not look like this in the future. Yeah.
That is spoken like somebody who is not active online in Facebook comments or Instagram comments.
You should.
Like,
I mean,
I'm reading all the Forbes articles, man. Read all the Forbes articles.
we've seen a lot of photoshopped versions of what the next iteration will look like.
We need to call into the next investor call.
Yeah.
You just ask Toyota directly. It's like, yeah, what do you guys think about the third gen?
Yeah, I don't have that kind of money to be making those calls, but maybe. I mean, I hope there is a third gen and it's just as affordable, and if not, better performance. But the chances of it happening is pretty low. I mean, I don't know if you guys remember, but when the first gen came out, it was priced at like 26.
Yeah.
Or somewhere
around there,
in the
low
mid-20s.
Low mid-20s, yeah. Scion was the cheapest version.
Yeah. I mean, we're talking Canadian dollars, so it's like, whatever. It's not worth as much as the US dollar. So yeah, take that with a grain of salt. But now,
money up here.
Yeah, if you want to get into one of these now, you're looking at 35 or more.
It's like all cars, man. I look at SUVs and some of them are pushing like over 100. I'm like, man, what happened?
Yeah.
What happened?
So like the if there is another generation, it's gonna be,
It's been more expensive.
yeah, like prices of these things only go up. You don't see them come down rarely ever, unless they're taking features out. Yeah.
Makes sense. Well, let's wrap up the conversation on the oil pan and the FA24. I do want to circle back a little bit around just car setup.
Yeah.
One of the things in my background, so I worked in many years in management consulting, and there's a bit of a moniker. We always say, think 80-20, right? And it's like shorthand for 80% of the value is usually derived from 20% of the effort. So as you guys were kind of talking about, you can go down a deep rabbit hole and optimize anything and everything. But for a typical track enthusiast, what do you think are the the three things that make the biggest difference that anyone should really either learn about, or a tool that they should get or learn about, or software that they should learn to use, or even just like a mindset, right? Like what makes the difference? What really drives value?
Yeah, this is a tough one.
Oh yeah, geez, you can go everywhere.
But that's precisely it, right? Like how do you focus?
I'll give you one that bothers me a lot. When you buy those expensive dampers with multi-way adjustment, when you buy whatever, like a brake bias adjust, or you buy like this fancy intercom tire pressure gauge, and then you say, no, I don't want to change my car. Why even buy adjustable dampers in the first place? Like, those adjustment knobs are there for you to play with. And I don't think from a skill development perspective, not even within motorsports, like you learn by modifying constraints. You learn by presenting new scenarios to yourself and then understanding the effect and then becoming, integrating that into your skill. So if you have these adjustable dampers and you have all these knobs and these tire pressure things, just
play with
change
them.
it.
Yeah.
Just change it. Don't be so afraid. It's like, oh, I don't know. Like, oh, dude, just.
I totally get that, but here's why I think people are scared of it.
Okay.
I think what people are scared of was when they make an adjustment and they can't tell the difference, and then that spirals them into a whole new world of thinking. It was like, I'm not good enough to notice the difference. I just spent all this money on these $3,000 three-way suspension. I made huge sweeping differences, and I can't tell the difference. And it's like, wow, that really attacks my identity as a car enthusiast.
They don't want to admit they suck at driving.
You know what? That's okay. Like, you gotta find out one way or another. Like, you gotta find out what the car is sensitive to. Like, are you doing 1 click? Are you doing 2 click? Like, when I did the experiment with Ping, I had the same question. Like, what do dampers do? Like, sure, I know what it does, like in the concept, but like, what does the driver feel?
Yeah.
Like, we literally did high low. Like, I maxed it out and then I minned it out and said, like, what is the two ends of the spectrum and can the driver feel it? And Ping's like, kind of do. It kind of helps. And we learned that, like, yeah, damping does make a difference, but it's not like the world biggest changing. There's only one way. Tire pressures, we did the same thing. We were methodical about it. I had this test schedule where I'd randomly lower the tire pressure on an axle. I would fake them out and like move to the front axle and pretend to drop the pressure and then move to the back and then actually drop it. And I tell him to go out. And lo and behold, at the end of the day, like, he says PB.
Yeah.
So, these adjustments are there for you. That the track evolution is changing, the environment is changing. The car is not going to be the same the next time you go out. So just change it. And maybe you like it, maybe you don't. That's okay. But that's the fun of it, right? Don't be so like shy, like, I need to be a robot and drive the same thing. No, you want to improve the skill of the driver. And you can improve the skill of the driver by changing constraints. And by changing constraints, you can change the car.
Yeah, we see this quite a bit at the track where people show up, they don't even lower their tire pressures. They go out, they drive, and then they come back, and obviously the tire pressures are way too high now because you never drive it as aggressively on the street. And then they don't, like, most people don't know to check. But like, once you get into that mindset of like playing around with all the levers you have, then you open yourself up to like a whole new dimension. Yeah, I would say. And when you get into more serious racing, people are fiddling with stuff all the time. Like, yeah. So I mean, this is like a simple thing. Maybe if you have a stock car, the only thing you can do is play with tire pressures and adjust the way you drive. I mean, even that, like going into a corner differently the next time you go around, makes the learning more fun, I would say.
Yeah, I think there's a fundamental misunderstanding that we think the racing driver is this line following robot. You need to put the car here exactly and brake at this exact point. No, I don't think the human driver is a robot. The human driver is a human. So let's teach him like a human. And humans learn by adapting to new situations, by integrating it into their themselves and growing the skill. So don't feel afraid to just play around with your driving style.
Yeah.
Do something different. Anything with your driving or with the car, and who knows, you might unlock some performance.
That is cool to think about that process when you bring the human factor into it. And I think a lot of people they romanticize the lap time. And I've found a lot of people adverse to making change because they're like, this is what I had before. I just can't get it right today. I want to be able to, redo that lap before I change something. But obviously they've come back at a different day. The conditions change. How much sleep did they have? Did they drink water previous to the session? There's so many different factors. So when you talk about changing knobs. Like, yes, you have the availability, all the options, but do you have the lack of ego to sacrifice a session or two for experimentation? I think a lot of people are missing that.
Yeah. So this is kind of interesting because like Kelvin got really deep into the learning process. Like when you introduce somebody to something new, they're not going to be good at it. And even if you were good at it, let's say like, pro sports like golf, pro players have gone out of their way to change their swings because they know they're doing their current swings wrong. And I think one prime example was like Tiger Woods. He like totally changed up the way he swings his golf club because he knows that there's more potential in the newer version. And immediately performance will go down. There's going to be a learning period where you will have to adapt to the new way of doing something before you can unlock the full performance or the potential of the new way of doing something. So you need to be okay with not setting the best time if you're in this exploratory learning phase.
Yeah.
And then once you have mastered it, the performance will go back up. So short-term sacrifice for, I don't know, future gains, I guess.
But my ego, man.
I know. Like the reality, like what's happening cognitively is that you're disrupting your habits. That's what it is. You're disrupting your habits. So of course, performance will go down because that's what you're used to, right? It's like comfortable. But once you form those new connections, integrate that skill, really internalize it, that's when you realize the performance. And I think people, it's easy to get impatient, but for us, it's all about the long term. I understand that for time attack, you got to make the lap right then and there. But my principle with working with any driver is to work with them on the long run, because I know as enthusiasts, we're here to drive, not just at the competition, but at the next one and the next one and the next one. And hopefully it's like, we want to see the driver's skill compound over the years. So that way, the next year that they come, they're even faster. They set that PB. Maybe not today, but we can work towards that future where they have confidence in the car.
Yeah.
Where does it all end? Right? And let me
It never ends.
preface this.
Yeah.
Right? Because this is the thing that always challenges me, because yes, we romanticize lap times, and there is, because cars and tracking is bound by the laws of physics, we know that there is a theoretical limit, right? And all we can do is try to approach that limit as best as we can. And when I think about that, sometimes it's like you mentioned, it's like, oh, we're not robots, right? Yeah. But I can't escape the thought that there is a perfect set of conditions and actions that cannot be exceeded. So are we just, no,
I don't think so. I'm a little bit spoiled because I read the literature on it. So technically, yes, you can reduce the motorsport problem to an optimal control problem, which you can solve with something like direct collocation with a model, and you get like a series of inputs that are technically perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, I had the opportunity to read a PhD paper and talk with the person who wrote this PhD paper, and they basically said, yeah, I did this for some track, some IMSA track, and basically it doesn't match because there's a bump.
Yeah.
So we can talk about the theoretical limit, but that's the beauty of the sport, is that there's these human and environmental factors that will always vary, and at the end of the day, there are humans behind that decision of what to do and how to adapt to that situation that will always intrigue us. That will always be fascinating beyond just the laws of physics. And I think that's what makes motorsports so beautiful.
Yeah.
Well said. Well said. So one of the things I like to do with our guests is I like to creep them on LinkedIn.
Okay.
And one of the interesting things that I saw, Ping, that you are currently dabbling in is financial literacy. Okay. And I wanted to hear your thoughts about, this one sphere, financial literacy.
Yeah.
And the other, a car hobby.
Okay. How do they work together?
How do they work together? Do you have any opinions unpopular opinions, popular opinions.
Yeah, this is probably not going to be the popular part of the podcast.
Hey, I want to hear it.
All right. So, well, it's kind of funny. We're all Asian here. Does
That's the funny part.
Does your parents approve of this hobby?
Do they know about the hobby? Of course, yeah.
So
I always get questions.
Yeah,
it's like, why are you still doing this?
It's kind of
it's not. It's to them. It's not about the money. It's just like they're just like, why?
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah. There's that's definitely one side of it. I think at one point I told my mom how much the K swap cost, and she freaked out. And she's like, "What the fuck are you doing with your life?"
It's not about the money. It's just it's the disappointment. It's like, what do you? It just throws into question all the other decisions that you made up until this point and all your future decisions.
Yeah. I think the next one was, I came home. So if you don't know, my car caught fire at one point.
Whoa.
At the track, and then I came home with a car on a flatbed. And then 2 weeks later, I had another Civic at the house because I needed parts from that one to rebuild this current one. I'm gonna say it's very gracious of my parents to allow me to do this, because most times it would end right there. Yeah, but yeah, the crossover for financial literacy. I mean, we all know this is not a cheap hobby. This is not a low cost hobby. I mean, you're got to be making at least some decent money to support something like this. You can bootstrap it to the point that you start racking up some debt, but like that's obviously not recommended. So when you look at it from the financial literacy circle, you better be getting a lot of freaking enjoyment out of this hobby for you to be putting this kind of money into it. Because there are way more efficient ways of getting enjoyment, but we got problems, man. Like
we're not suggesting anybody do hard drugs.
Yeah. All four of us have a problem, and we freaking love cars, and it's expensive, but we still do it.
Yeah.
So I mean, nobody wants to hear this, but like, race what you can afford, and by that I mean like get all your other financial obligations in check first before you start dropping money on this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of rules and guides and whatever out there on like, how much percentage of your money you should be spending on various things to kind of like follow this path to somewhat of a decent financial position that you can be in. You can start mixing them, I guess. Like, you can mix your transportation and your hobbies and everything else you do into this one hobby. And if you look at that budget, it's probably not very high. I definitely exceeded this. And at one point, I think when I was racing with OTA, there was like 1 month where I needed new tires and had to get work done on the car and bought a bunch of shit on Amazon and like, my ex-girlfriend's birthday or whatever. Like, well, I forgot what it was. But basically there's 1 month where I actually spent more money than I made. And that's when I was like, oh, damn, this is a problem. I need to look at this at least a little bit, but most people don't. At the very least, make sure your other obligations are met before you start racing.
Yeah.
That's probably the best way to put it. Anything else is just basically telling you to spend less money on this hobby.
Well, there are ways, and I think one of the main ones that I think the vast majority of people modifying cars don't do is I don't think they read the rule book for where they want to race. And oftentimes people
who thinks about the series that they want to race in before modifying and souping up their car, man?
Exactly,
come on, right? Order of operations here.
Exactly. So and that's I'm using this opportunity to be like, okay, if you're interested in racing, you're probably, your friend shared this podcast on social media, like, okay, listen to these guys, they're talking whatever. You have an 86, you're interested in taking it to the track. There are things that you can do to improve the car. But if you look at a series, say, for example, our home to us is Ontario Time Attack, and you'll look at the cars that have entered in all the classes, you'll see the 86 spread out amongst quite a few classes. So think what degree of 86 can you afford to build? Where do you want? How many players are there in each class that you want to compete against? Or if you've already taken the car to the track, do you know what lap time you can put down? And where do you reasonably fit? I think a lot of people miss that when they enter the car hobby because they're entering the car hobby, not the competition hobby. So it's like, once you've decided you want to enter competition, step 1, read the rule book. Step 2, read the rule book.
Yeah. Question for you, actually, Patrick.
Go ahead.
Because you guys are racing in endurance racing, at the beginning of the year, do you guys do up a budget?
Yeah. We have a spreadsheet right now of a unfortunately 5-figure number. It's spread amongst the team
Couple
members
people.
who are crowdfunding our campaign.
I don't think anyone's doing it for less than 5 figures.
No, well, this is just to put the car together. We haven't paid for the track fees, fuel, tires, mechanicals that may or may not occur over the season, which could be avoided with the inclusion of a new oil pan from Formula Delta that we can try out for you guys. But right now we are doing a budget and we're considering things that are, nice to have.
Yeah.
Considering things that will add significant value. Again, sort of that 80-20 rule. Can we get to 80% with 20% of the budget?
Yeah. So this is would you say the series you guys are racing in is like an entry-level endurance racing?
It has to be because right now it's the only endurance racing series in the country.
Yeah.
That does 8 hours long. It turns out to be budget in a very relative state. If you look at teams that are doing sprint races on a solo effort, when you think about road racing, right, you're thinking about you watch F1 or you watch like NASCAR, like in relative time, they're doing it for a shorter amount of time, but they're spending way more money.
Yeah.
So if we go back to another series in comparison, the Canadian Autosport Club's sprints, GT sprints, these are by and large privateer owners of their own vehicle. They're putting up the costs on their own, and that includes slick tires, which is a little bit more expensive than a regular like road going street tire.
Yeah.
So do I think Lucky Dog is entry level? Yes, but in like relative perspective, of course, there are other avenues to exploring motorsports.
Yeah.
Broad term, of course, time attack, lapping, autocross, and the such. But with regards to wheel-to-wheel racing, I do think it is the most affordable way to get into a wheel-to-wheel scenario.
Yeah. I guess the point I was trying to bring up is that there's this huge range of like you driving your car to you performance driving your car to wheel racing.
Mm-hmm.
And just understanding what it costs is kind of important. I think Kelvin and I did this like very early days where we priced out the cost of taking the Civic to TMP for a day.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the time, people look at it as like you got your entrance fee.
Oh, it's $200, man.
Yeah, you got your days of gas.
Yeah.
And then
Your tires, your brakes, the consumption.
Maybe.
Oil.
But even then, like, maybe you include some of those and you'll be surprised at the number. And then the number of times you go to that track that year is going to start adding up.
It adds up.
It's
Not just the track fee.
So don't once you put in a set of brake pads, it doesn't stop there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It literally does, though. Sorry, dad joke.
But the point I'm trying to make is that once you spread this cost out, like the Civic was super affordable to take to the track, and it was still at a number that I was like, holy shit, I don't know how many of these I can do in a year.
Yeah.
But
from a performance perspective, I think of it as like optimizing the whole. We talk about driver, well, you can think of it just driver and car, the performance on the track, but you can think of it in terms of, are you enjoying it? What's the cost, and integrating the cost strategy, the rule book into the build, into your entire hobby. And I think being able to optimize the whole, you can get the best performance, you can get the most value for money. and stay on budget and not go bankrupt doing this.
Yeah, that's probably the biggest tips. Like, don't get into debt doing this.
Yeah.
I understand if you buy a new car and you are on some kind of loan or finance program, but like, if you take it to the track and you write that off, make sure there's some kind of coverage or you're okay with that situation. Because I think the worst thing that could happen is that you try to do something that's enjoyable, and then you end up even further in debt because of it.
Life-changing debt sometimes, right? With the cost of cars, it's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, you guys are all giving like really good advice, and I think, when I first started this hobby and when I was a little bit younger, ironically, I think I had a more stringent perspective of like, this is how much I want to spend doing this, and yes, get your affairs in order, pay things that you're responsible for. I think as I've grown up a little bit, my views softened a little bit in that, no judgment, right? Like it's your money, you spend it however you want. But my one thing that I always advocate for is that it has to be an informed decision.
Yeah.
Right. Like you're saying, like you're not giving any percentages of like spend this much of your money on your hobby, right? Because as you said, it really depends on how much you value and how much enjoyment that it gives you and what community that builds and how that motivates you and gives you energy.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I've definitely softened on that, but like, again, like it's about making as an informed decision as you can. And unfortunately, a lot of the marketing around the car hobby does kind of push you to be more spontaneous.
Yeah.
Right. And we're in Black Friday week, right? There's a lot of things vying for our attention and spending money. And, the culture around, not the Rolex wearing Speedmaster GT3 RS rich people, that there's that car hobby people. And then there's us that are like, oh, bought a new turbo kit. Guess it's ramen for the next couple of months, right? Like that's our sphere. And, we laugh at that. But again, like these are the kind of things that start to be, they start up as jokes, but then they start becoming normalized where like people are actually doing this. And again, no judgment if that's you. If you made that decision with good information for you, say like, you know what, this is what I want to do.
Yeah.
But I just feel like it can be like the market's kind of out to get us a little bit. And I used to like look at some of the smaller brands when it's tax season. There's that means like, oh, it's tax return season. We have these great sale. And to me, that always just felt like, oh, it's a little predatory.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like I get it for like these small business owners. I mean, they're not like, mega rich people out trying to steal your money or make you make these bad decisions because they're just trying to put food on the table as well, right? So I'm trying to find like where the right balance is, and and the only thing I can really conclude is just like, yeah, as long as you have good information in front of you and making this choice, then all the power to you.
Yeah, I mean, financial literacy is not really taught in school. Feel like it's. It kind of fuels the consumerism in our society.
For sure.
And I mean, that's part of the economy as well. So it's kind of I don't know. It's such a nuanced topic. Like nobody wants to hear it. But also it's kind of necessary at the same time.
We don't shy away from taboo topics on this podcast.
So yeah, I mean, whatever, all the power to the people, I guess. But like make sure you have your stuff together. Like racing is important, but it's, at least to me, it's still a hobby.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you never know. I think for me personally, it's like you never know what's going to happen. Maybe, God forbid, you get injured. Maybe you wreck your car, you crash it or whatever. Like something terrible happens. Like make sure that you can pay yourself, so that way you can enjoy your hobby. You can enjoy the sport after whatever that situation, after that incident. You don't want to wreck yourself to be able to say like you knocked yourself out from ever racing in like the next 20 years before you can do it again.
Yeah. Another taboo topic, and maybe we'll say this for another podcast, but on that note, I just went through the process of getting life insurance with motorsports in mind. It was pretty interesting journey. But yeah, maybe for another episode. It's the stuff that nobody wants to talk about, but we'll talk about it here.
How much additional premium percentage wise?
So I'll give you a preview. Okay. I got different quotes.
Yeah.
One company wanted 6x the premium additional, so it would have been 7x.
Yeah.
Right. And the other company read through my application and the additional forms and said, "Okay, you're good. No additional premiums."
Okay.
So this is just, it comes down to like, it's a niche space, and some companies have a proper underwriting team looking at this and based on their experience and saying like, okay, yeah, we apply this. And to be fair, I think in both ends, like no one's pricing this accurately. I think 7x is like
too much.
That's way too much. Like in my mind, when I look at this hobby, what we're competing in, it's no more dangerous than going skiing every year.
Yeah.
I would say maybe skiing honestly feels more dangerous.
Arguably safer in fully like caged cars.
Yeah.
Like,
so there's all that, but again, it's like that's a huge financial difference. For the exact same product, right? And so it's an interesting thing.
Yeah, there's a bunch of areas that this starts affecting, but you don't really think about it until later. There's also insurance companies that will start dinging you for showing up to competitions with your street car. You hear horror stories about this, and that's, one of the many reasons why people take their plates off, blah, 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 at the track. But yeah, there are implications, and you at least should be, at least you should know that these are possibilities before you get into it. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Well, this has been a fantastic conversation. I feel like we've been all over the place, and I still feel like there's more to talk about for, when you guys launch your products, when you're on to new products and you come back on the show. We're definitely doing a launch party. I think we have to do a launch party. It'll be so much fun. But one segment we always kind of wrap up our podcast with our guests is this segment we like to call Modest Dream Garage. So we're just talking money. Your budget, $200,000. Okay, you get 3 cars, and the prompt is that the 3 cars need to satisfy all your needs for your family. Okay.
Okay.
What are those 3 cars?
Kelvin, do you want to go first?
Yeah. 1 Toyota Prius, 2 Volkswagen Touareg, and 3 maybe like a Subaru BRZ, or if I can, like a D5 or like Civic Type R or Integra Type R. Yeah, something along those lines. I think it's pretty modest.
Yeah. So the Prius is your personal daily kind of thing. The Touareg would be moving the family around and stuff like that.
Tow car.
Tow car.
Yeah.
So you're talking like a diesel?
Yeah,
like
probably. Yeah, TDI.
Like the one that Chris Bisson has.
I haven't seen that one personally, but
we've used that one so much, man. It's
definitely
great.
If you can tow. And then a track toy.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good set.
That's kind of nice. I mean, I don't know. I'm having a hard time. I feel like
I'm too practical here. The practical one.
Yeah, I have to include at least one Honda Civic in this lineup.
Which generation?
Oh man, I don't know. This is the tough part. It's like the new stuff is nice.
Yeah. Do you think it carries the spirit?
Which one? 2024 Type R?
Yeah, FL5. To does it feel like it? Yes, this is the evolution of your EK.
Oh, okay. That's totally different. I think
it's a big car.
Yeah, like when you look at the car, any of the earlier Hondas versus now, the new stuff looks huge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Accord Type R.
Yeah, there we go.
It's a tough one. Tough one. I like the fact that they're still making one. Do I agree with their suspension choices? Maybe not. That new thing is super bouncy. I haven't had the chance to drive one yet, but I want to at the very least get a ride in one. But like, I want like an older Honda Civic.
Like, I think, so bring a trailer kind of deal.
Ah, man. Like there's no perfect Honda Civic. That's a problem.
They're all perfect.
Yeah. Like maybe I would like maybe a FK8 Type R as like a drive around.
Hot boy Type R.
Yeah. I feel like that's like a nice balance decision just before, it's accessible. It's not crazy expensive and somewhat
there are a lot on dealership lots these days.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
pick one up cheap.
And for the FR experience, I it's unfortunate I say this because I feel like I'm going to piss off some people at the same time. But I like.
Don't say BMW.
No, it's not a BMW. I kind of like the Corvette,
Okay.
like a C7 Corvette.
Yeah.
Or even a
Or
C6.
C6.
Yeah, C6 or C7.
Our friend Scott Shadbolt
He just got one.
surprised the heck out of us when we asked him this question, because we were just like, oh, he's got probably has like 10 BMW tattoos all over his body, and he's like, Corvette. I need a Corvette.
Yeah, I mean, I think from a budget performance or like performance per dollar perspective, like that's pretty high up there.
Yep.
And then lastly, some kind of SUV tow vehicle. I haven't really decided, but like something to shuttle the family around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shout out the Corvette.
Yeah, and your Corvette and potentially Civic Type R, depending on where you're going, I guess.
The double day.
Yeah, there you go.
Bring the whole family to the track.
Yeah, maybe just one tow vehicle for one vehicle is fine. Yeah, you can decide what you want to take, but something along those lines, whatever fits the budget. I mean, 200Ks sounds really good, but then once you start getting into the details, it goes down real fast.
Real quick.
Yeah, so
That's where we live in now. Yeah.
I think I
Exactly.
answered that question way back saying Formula 1600, but I looked into it again. If you were to buy one new, they're like $100,000, like US. Crazy.
They're not cheap.
You get one used.
Not cheap.
Not cheap.
Yeah.
A new Radical is also not cheap.
No, they're
Yeah.
like 150, 170, something like that. I don't even know anymore.
Yeah, it's too bad. It just can't be like a nice, proper race car because it just blows the budget right out the window.
Yeah.
You know?
That's why it's got to be modest.
Spec me out, baby.
I mean, even a GR spec car is.
Oh well, they're way
100 plus.
overpriced because of the transmission, right?
Yeah, but
they got a sequential.
Oh, it's got a sequential.
Yeah, they got a sequential.
Why?
yeah.
Is that really necessary?
Well,
Well, how do you bring in the clientele that wants to, feel
that
like
wants
they're
to.
in that series?
What do you mean? What's so different about this clientele? What does that? What does that mean? To
Tell us
feel?
more, Patrick.
Money, baby. They want to spend that money.
Oh, I thought you were gonna say because they can't drive stick, but
Oh no.
well,
No, I'm sure the guys-
well.
I mean, I follow like all the WEC memes, so I think the term's called dentist.
Yeah.
I thought that was radical cup. No, I'm kidding.
I'm making a lot of enemies on this one.
It's okay. People already hate me. It's fine.
Yeah. What about you, Jason? What's your setup?
Oh, what did I say when we did this? I think I said I probably did say a Touareg too.
Oh, really?
Oh no. I said Land Cruiser. That's one. I was very infatuated with that car for the tow vehicle, and I'm still kind of like considering that one. Although like a lease return X5 plug-in hybrid is like, it's always in the back of my mind. It's like, oh, like the city drive would be really nice with that, and the range is good enough for like a daily commute.
You've been talking about that a lot. I think you should just send it.
How much of that budget are you spending on that on the tow vehicle here?
So if you buy like a new Land Cruiser, they're what, like $90K off the lot? It's a lot.
Okay.
It's a lot. And then previous Gen X5 PHEV will set you back like $60K with good mileage, I think.
Okay. That's not bad.
Yeah, and then so my other car is like, yeah, an 86, probably a first gen. That would be the track toy that I would use. And then I think I said for like a fun weekend car, I think I said M2.
Ooh,
I said M2, and I think that after having seen the G series, for me personally, I probably get the F87. And if you asked me a couple months ago, I probably would have said DCT, but now I'm like, I don't know, maybe the 6-speed, because I've gotten to the point where before I'd always want the car that's optimized for the fastest lap time of a specific model.
Okay.
But the F series, if I were to modify it to the, to the absolute limit, I think it would be too much car for me. That I'd just take that option away from myself and just use the 6-speed, because then
What?
I'd want to use it for a different purpose.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Because I feel like, and when I say like modify it to like the absolute limit, it would be like Jason Lee's car plus like 5 years from now,
Mm.
right? Because and look at the trajectory he's on. I know the trajectory he's on.
Like crazy acceleration.
Yeah, he's
And
gonna
doing
go
more
nuts.
mods to it or something.
He's gonna go, and that
That's
car's
crazy.
like it's
That
already
car's
so
nuts
fast
already.
right? So
Yeah.
yeah. I'll do that with my first gen FRS. That's I keep teasing him. He's like, of course, like he'll push back on me. He's like, your car's never gonna get done. But I always tease him, like, look, man, this thing is gonna basically put out the same power as your car, and it's gonna be like 1,000 pounds lighter.
I like that you
And
returned
we'll have the same
question.
DCT.
You returned the question after so much time that we've like been doing the podcasts.
Yeah.
And then now it's like your
It's like
perspective.
a little different.
You matured a little bit.
Did I though? Did I? Or did I regress? Anyway, that's what it is. Well, that's it's like 2.5 hours. It's a good conversation, good discussion. Time flies.
Yeah.
Before we wrap off, any last words, shout outs?
Anything?
Yeah, I'm not prepared for this one.
Yeah. I don't think we don't. Yeah. I think we're good. I mean,
Well,
shout
I
out
think-
to all the.
Yeah.
Shout out to all the people that's been helpful along the way.
Yeah. Who are the unhelpful people?
Well, we won't name any names, but yeah, there were definitely a lot of helpful people along the way. I mean, like, Kevin, Jason, a bunch of guys on the forums have been helpful. There's people that's been reaching out with 3D scans and whatnot. That's been super helpful.
Wow.
Yeah, it's been like a really good community. Just the GR86 BRZ community has been super receptive to everything. So
It's got to
yeah,
be Gen 2 because a lot of Gen 1ers were like, nah.
well, yeah. Anyways,
The third owner Gen 1s, nah.
yeah. I mean, the second gen community has been great so far.
Yeah,
yeah.
sick.
And we're really looking forward to make more future announcements soon.
Mm-hmm.
Very exciting. Well, as always, if you guys have any questions for our guests, for Ping or for Kelvin, you can hit up the YouTube video comment section for this episode. You can throw it up in the Spotify questions and answers as well, but we don't check that as often. But if you throw them in the YouTube video comments, we'll be sure to bring up on the next episode, or maybe Ping Kelvin just take a look at the comment section and then answer them directly as well.
Yeah, we can definitely do that.
For sure.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, guys. I learned a lot in this conversation. I feel like we need, like, the next time you guys are on the show, we need another person that can translate the technical conversation to bring it down to the explain like 5 level for me to understand. But no, this was great, and I appreciate you guys being our first guests in this new space and warming it up and kicking things off for us in this new era.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks for joining us, and we'll catch you guys on the next one.
Peace.